He died because he trusted his girlfriend. Big mistake. Now he's back from the dead, with trust issues and a god-tier power, opening loot boxes. While others fight zombies, he's looting like a maniac. He doesn't survive the apocalypse. He unboxes it and his assistants actively defend his base. Want to see if luck beats death? Let's find out. This story begins on a dark night in an abandoned warehouse. The main character, Zhang Xiaoyang, was hung over a cage with zombies, and his enemies admired this spectacle. His ex-girlfriend named Kui Jing called out to him with a smile and said that all his friends were dead. Doesn't he think that his life has no meaning anymore? Looking at the mutilated corpses below, Xiaoyang remembered them still alive and began to blame himself for the fact that they died. Because of this, he became very angry and called the girl a snake, wishing her the most miserable death. And she immediately rushed to complain to her lover, and he said that they would make his death slower to calm her anger. He thanked Xiaoyang for the supplies, because now they can live a few months in peace. After which he pressed the button and MC fell into the cage. The zombies rushed towards him and began to devour him alive. And he, suffering terrible pain, told Kui Jing in his mind that if he had another chance, he would make them pay for this. That's how he died. Suddenly, the light appeared in his eyes again. He almost jumped up from his seat and Kui Jing exclaimed in displeasure. What's wrong with him? Why is her name not on the property documents? Does he really not love her? He looked at her in shock and looked around, not understanding what happened. Did he really go back to the time before the apocalypse? Last time, Kui Jing deceived him. She not only stole all of his parents' inheritance, but also threw him out into the street. Later, the whole world plunged into chaos. People began to turn into zombies, and he found new friends, created a safe haven, and was able to survive. But he was deceived by this snake that came to him and pressed on his pity. In fact, it was a trick set up by their enemies. As soon as they accepted her, they unknowingly let their enemies into their hideout. Now Kui Jing told him not to forget about the bride price, no less than 400,000 yuan, which is about $60,000. Xiaoyang looked at her with displeasure and mentally called her an evil fool. And she asked, he hurt her, right? He tried to calm down and not give in to emotions, but when she spoke again, he could not hold back and kicked her out, slamming the door behind her, which made her very surprised and thought, when did he become so self-confident? As soon as he was alone, he looked at the calendar. It was 2034. Since there was only a month left until the apocalypse, he decided to prepare, but suddenly a beeping sound appeared next to his ear and a system window appeared, informing him of the task. The apocalypse system has been activated, the tasks are active, so let him complete them as soon as possible. The first task was to prepare for the disaster. He needs to prepare a plot of land and supplies for a year. For all this, he will receive a reward of 10 points, which will allow him to make purchases in the system store. He was not surprised at all by some kind of system, and immediately went to the store to see what he could buy at all. Suddenly his stomach growled loudly. He completely forgot that all his past life he was constantly hungry and suffering to save money for his engagement to Kui Jing. He walked to the table, took his phone, and opened the delivery app with the thought that zombies will appear in a month, so he needs to try more delicious food while he can. Evening came. His entire table was filled with fragrant dishes, and he thought, is this the same legendary delivery, marked with 3 Michelin stars? He was curious about the taste of the 300 yuan braised pork, and when he put a piece in his mouth, he tore his shirt open with delight and shouted that it was delicious. After that, he started to eat, and while he was cutting up the crab, Kui Jing's friend Wang Shuya called him. He immediately realized that this fool had complained to her friend, and he answered the call. An angry voice of a girl immediately came from the phone, exclaiming, how dare he treat her friend like that? She just wanted him to prove his love to her. How can he love her if he won't even give her real estate? It was a small test, and he failed it. Let him bring the house register and 1,000,000 yuan. They will not break up if he admits his mistake. He got angry and started shouting, asking who she thinks she is. He told her to go to hell, then ended the call and leaned back on the sofa with a heavy sigh. Throwing all thoughts of this good-for-nothing woman away, he thought about a piece of land. He needed to build a strong fortress that would be easy to defend, and there should be a water source and a forest nearby. After that, he went to the real estate agency, where he was met by an employee named Ning Wanwan, who greeted him kindly and asked if he wanted to rent a house or buy one. He wanted to answer her, but as always happens, the evil manager Zhu appeared and ordered the girl to go to the warehouse and help with the boxes, since a lot of paper rolls had arrived. She told him that she had a client, but he grabbed her by the shoulder and forced her to step aside, asking displeasedly, did she forget what he taught her? Is she completely blind? Let her quickly go to the warehouse. She wanted to object, and he looked at Xiaoyang with disdain, called him a loser in rags, and said that he couldn't even buy a toilet, so he wasn't a client. Of course, this made the MC angry, and he exclaimed, does he dare to look down on people? The evil manager let out a chuckle and said that he only sees a mongrel. If he can at least buy a toilet, then he will eat poop on stream. The MC frowned in displeasure, then said with a smirk that he had prepared something fresh and warm for him. After that, he took out his cool black card and handed it to the girl, saying that he didn't come to rent or buy a house, but to buy land. With this statement, he shocked all the other clients, because buying land literally means that he is rich. Wanwan invited him to come with her, so she could explain everything to him, and Zhu looked after them with displeasure, saying that everyone can brag, he would see what would happen when it was time to pay. The girl led Xiaoyang to a separate room and gave him a piece of paper with the prices of all the land available to them, and while he was watching, she would explain everything. He decided to do without it. He would simply list his conditions, and she would say if there was anything suitable. He needed a plot of land near mountains and rivers. He needed a running source of water and convenient transportation. It would be better if there was some factory or a large building there. The girl thought about it, after which, Manager Zhu approached him and said that there was a suitable plot of land in the Beijing area. She turned to him in surprise and exclaimed, "Did she understand him correctly? There are a lot of unfinished factories there. They cannot sell such a plot of land." He looked at Xiaoyang arrogantly and said that no one sells something like that. He deliberately puts forward such strange demands because he is not going to buy anything. MC asked if the site met his requirements, and Wanwan confirmed it, but there is an abandoned factory there. The head of the construction team ran away. He looked at the prices and thought it was a good place, and the conditions are suitable. He will need to cover everything with barbed wire, and the abandoned building will save money and time on construction. He agreed to buy and asked her to sign the contract so that he can pay right away. And for some reason the girl apologized. It turns out that she thought he would refuse, but when she realized his words, she was very surprised and clarified. Is he sure he wants to buy this particular place? He confirmed it and asked her to quickly finish the paperwork. He wants to see how someone will eat poop. Manager Zhu gritted his teeth in indignation. And when Xiaoyang paid everything and he looked at the check, he grabbed his head and exclaimed, "An advance of 300,000? Who would spend that kind of money on a site with an unfinished factory?" He just can't believe it. Now it was the MC's time to laugh at him. He put his hand on his shoulder and said that the payment went through, so it was his time to shine. He would definitely buy a paid subscription to his channel if he did it with pleasure. After that, he left, and the other customers began to mock the manager and point cameras at him, offering him to try what they ate today. That's how he completed one of the conditions of the task. Now he just had to take care of the supplies. He was so thoughtful that he didn't notice how he passed by Kui Jing's lover, but then he saw him and wondered what he was doing here. When he entered the real estate agency, he saw Manager Zhu, who was being fed poop, and he was begging them not to do it. Meanwhile, Kui Jing was doing her girly stuff, and Li Shuxiong called her. She answered the phone and coquettishly called him a brat, asking if he still hadn't forgotten about her. He excitedly told her that Xiaoyang had bought the land, and she jumped up from her chair in rage and slammed her palm on the table, exclaiming where he got the money for that. He told her that he had paid 300,000 in advance. This was probably the bride price money he had been saving up. She was very angry because he had spent her money. And the man asked her to calm down, let her find him, and ask him what was going on. But she was furious. She only cared about her money. Soon MC returned home and thought about the fact that buying supplies and building a base would be expensive. Where was he going to get money? Suddenly there was an angry knock on his door, which scared him. After which he opened the door and saw an angry woman and her friend on the threshold. He asked what they were doing here. She immediately began to scold him for spending her money, but he had no idea what she was talking about. Then she furiously pointed her finger at him and told him to stop pretending. He bought the land with the bride price money, and this is her money. Which means the land is now hers. He asked in confusion, was she completely crazy? He hit her on the shoulder with a wad of money and told her to remember that he has enough of it, but she will not get anything. She can forget about it, and let her boyfriend Li Shuxiong know about it. She remained silent and thought, how did he even know about their affair? Then her friend intervened. She asked Xiaoyang to calm down and said that it was just a misunderstanding, to which he replied that it was not like that at all. She was not his girlfriend anymore. So he should go to his old man Li Shuxiong. He finally said that he was disgusted even looking at her, and slammed the door, and she thought fearfully, how did he know about this? They were always careful when renting a room. After that, they decided to leave. Shreya called the elevator and asked her friend why she didn't tell her earlier that she was dating that old man. She told her that they just rented a room a couple of times, and she, sighing heavily, said that everything had gotten out of control. She suggested that she go back and think about what to do next. As soon as the elevator doors opened, Kuijing walked inside, and her friend grinned evilly. Since she had a fight with Xiaoyong, she would not hold back any longer. You always have to share with your friends. The next day, MC went to his site and asked Foreman Lee from Palu Construction Company how long it would take to renovate this factory. He responded by listing everything he had decided to build here, reinforcing the walls, watchtowers, barbed wire, blast-proof doors, bulletproof glass. Is he preparing for war? Xiaoyong chose not to answer this question and asked him to simply name the amount. He needed them to finish the construction within a month. The foreman told him that they would not have time, so he threatened him that he would find someone who would do it. The man was indignant and said that their company also needed to live on something, and he asked if he was appealing to his conscience. He smiled nervously and said that it would take a lot of money. They would have to work at full capacity, so at least this much was needed. He showed him 2 fingers. They need 20 million and 5 million in advance, then they can start working. MC agreed to this and said that he would transfer the money to them this week, so they can start. The foreman was worried because the amount was huge, and Xiaoyong, reading his mind, told him not to worry. They would take the land away if he didn't pay them. When he finally finished the construction, Shuya suddenly came up to him and called out to him with a smile, then hugged him by the arm and asked, "What is he doing here?" MC hated this girl. This cunning fool incited Kuijing to deceive him in her past life, so she will pay double in this life. He asked her displeasedly what she was doing here, but she ignored it and asked, "Is this his new land? There is such a beautiful scenery here. Does he want to build a villa here?" He brushed her off, telling her that it was none of her business, and she thought with displeasure, what was wrong with him anyway? This loser was acting weird. Usually, one touch from her was enough to make him embarrassed. He went to supervise the construction and saw the men who were marking out where the gate should be. He said that it should be wider. Seeing that he was no longer paying attention to her, Shia called out to him with displeasure and thought that she could not miss such a chance while they were arguing. Soon after, MC returned home. He mortgaged the house at the bank, but only received 3 million. He does not have enough for the first stage of construction, so he needs to find money. He suddenly remembered that the apocalypse was coming soon and decided to sell his house since there would be no need for it soon anyway. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. His neighbor asked to open the door for him. Xiaoyong already knew who was there. That old man came to him again. Neighbor Li definitely has a lot of money. He owns the 1st and 2nd floors and he wants to buy the 3rd, where his house is located. Initially, he was going to keep it for life after the wedding, so the old man constantly pestered him. He poured paint on his door, threw garbage, broke the locks, in short, did the most evil tricks. When he opened the door, the old man exclaimed that he was hanging out at clubs again last night, and he also started yelling, telling him to stop. He went to bed early. What other clubs? But the old man didn't care. He definitely heard this imaginary noise, and then the MC pretended that he could not stand his antics anymore and said that he was selling this house. The old man began to stutter in surprise and asked, "Is this true?" But Xiaoyong had conditions. His new house will be built for another 6 months, so he will stay here. The advance is 5 million. He needs to pay off the construction loan. Old man Li thought about it, and MC didn't wait for an answer. He was about to close the door, but he didn't let him do it and agreed, saying that they would sign a contract. Xiaoyong was only happy about this. He mentally wished that this old idiot would die in this house, and then return to business. Soon, old man Lei transferred 5 million to him, so now he has 8. It's time for him to complete the task and get a reward. After that, he went to the store. Quickly running between the rows of shelves, he threw all the products in a row into the cart, and one of the customers asked, "Is this guy completely crazy?" His wife told him it would be better not to approach him, after which people crowded around the many carts with food that he drove in and began to wonder why he needed so many products. They called him an idiot who fell for stories about the end of the world, and the system reported the completion of the tasks. He received 10 points. He was not very happy. The increase in characteristics would be more useful, but the protagonist's box costs exactly 10 points. He went into the store, looked at the prices, and thought that there was no point in doubting. He would grab the first opportunity. After that, he bought the protagonist's box, which turned out to be a first-level space ring that can hold 500 cubic meters of space, and time stops inside the ring. He was very happy about this. It was especially useful that time stops inside it. This means that the food will stay fresh. After that, a new task appeared. Now he needs to stock up on supplies for 10 years ahead. For this, he will receive 20 points. Suddenly, the store manager appeared with security. He was wondering who made the noise, and imagine his surprise when he saw Xiaoyong. He recognized him immediately. It was young Tao, his classmate from high school. He was a pawn of the bully Zhang Shengjie. He always intimidated the weak and was afraid of the strong. They often had arguments, but he never thought that he would run into him today. Yang Tao pointed his finger at him in anger and asked what he was doing. Let him return the goods to their place while he was still kind. He smirked in response and asked, has he decided to remain a hooligan for life? He will pay for these products. Is this how their store greets customers? Looking at the pile of shopping carts, he of course did not believe him and ordered him to pay for it now, otherwise he will regret it. An hour later, after the hard work of the cashiers, a check was finally issued for the products with a total cost of 56,000 yuan. Grabbing the payment terminal, Yang Tao handed it to Xiaoyang and ordered him to pay, after which he effectively swiped the card and the payment went through. Yang Tao gritted his teeth in frustration, not intending to admit his defeat, and decided to just leave. But the MC stopped him and he turned around in displeasure, exclaiming, what does he want? The MC wanted him to apologize for his rudeness, or he would take the goods back to the shelves. The bully got angry and told him not to look for trouble, and then the other customers stood up for Xiaoyang and started filming him, threatening that they would post it on the internet and make him famous. Feeling powerful, the MC ordered him to apologize. Then he would be kind and buy 10 times more. The man was very surprised, and then he offered to show him his balance. It was more than 7 million, which made Yang Tao's eyes almost pop out of their sockets in surprise. Xiaoyang again ordered him to apologize, and then he would buy everything. And the bully was faced with a difficult choice. Lose his pride and get big sales, or be left with nothing but save face. He chose the former and bowed, apologizing to Xiaoyang, and he, patting him on the head, advised him to control himself next time. Yang Tao immediately began to behave kindly and asked why he needed such supplies, and he answered him that it was none of his business. He was preparing a big deal. In this case, the man advised him to contact wholesalers because the store has little stock, and he asked, does he know such people? He confirmed this and asked, does he remember Zhang Shengjie? He has just such a business. After that, he called him and told him that he found a big client, and MC stood nearby and listened to them with the thought that they worked together. He wonders how much gray income from the supermarket goes into their pockets. After that, Yang Tao brought MC to the warehouse, and soon a black car drove up to them, which almost hit the two of them. Xiaoyang looked at the driver with displeasure and thought that he was driving so dangerously. Had he never been fined in his life? Shengjie got out of the car, he lit a cigarette and, looking at MC, asked if he was that client. Yang Tao told him that this was the same Xiaoyang. He studied with him in high school. Shengjie didn't recognize him at first, but then he remembered and blew cigarette smoke in his face, smirking and saying that he was that stubborn guy. He casually touched his sweater and asked if he was wearing fakes. He despised poor people who pretend to be rich the most. MC said that he had no idea what brand it was. He bought it at a street stall. After that, Shengjie got angry and grabbed Yang Tao, exclaiming that he was just wasting his time, but he continued to assure him that he was not joking. Then the man kicked him and said that he was the year in this business. He can tell a person with money by just looking at him. MC smirked and remarked that he had such a nasty character. He couldn't believe that an uneducated man looked down on others. Shengjie immediately grabbed him by the collar and asked what he said. Xiaoyang repeated his words, and the man furiously asked who he called uneducated. He calmly suggested that they call him a snob, and Yang Tao hastened to calm them down. He really is uneducated. That's why he is so offended. Shengjie furiously hit him and told him to shut up, then turned to Xiaoyang and said that if he does not buy a truckload of goods from him, he will go back on all fours. Then MC told him to stop tugging at his collar and tell him the account number, and when the money came to Shengjie, he asked in surprise, did he pay 1 million? MC told him that this is an advance payment. He will buy goods for 5 million. He will pay the rest when he prepares everything. Finally, the man believed him and asked what he wanted, to which he replied that he wanted to buy rice, oil, salt, snacks, and drinks. He takes what he does not have to check now. Then Shengjie took him to the warehouse and thought with a smirk that he was very lucky. He just happened to have a batch that was about to expire. After that, he showed him the goods and said that he would give it to him with a 10% discount. But first, Xiaoyang decided to look at the quality. He looked at the package and then said that the inside was practically rotten. He is still the same scammer, right? Shengjie became nervous. He thought that he did not understand this and gave him a 50% discount. MC said that he only spends 5 million on high-quality products, but he still agreed to take it, and the man wondered why he needed it. Xiaoyang did not forget about his discount and said that he would buy it on one condition. He would only pay in a month. Shengjie asked, will he do it even if the products are spoiled by then? He assured him that he would definitely pay him, but he wondered why he needed almost spoiled food. Did he really have some kind of distribution channel? MC told him that he was the distribution channel, then patted him on the shoulder and said that after some time, even expired goods would be worth their weight in gold. The man became very nervous, not understanding what he was talking about, and MC asked him to just deliver the goods. He would send the address a little later. Suddenly, an old man named Shenbo called him, who was interested in buying his house, and then he decided to go to him to discuss everything, finally telling Shenjie to resolve the issue with the products as soon as possible. As soon as he left, Yang Tao asked him if everything was okay with him, and he said that he thought he was a guy from an ordinary family. How did he even come to this? As soon as Xiaoyang returned home, he met with a potential buyer. He even prepared 400,000 in advance in cash. He even agreed to give him 3 months to move out and asked him to sign the contract, and MC noted that this old man had checked everything thoroughly and was even ready to buy. But why does he need his house? He asked, is he in a hurry? Shengbo told him that his granddaughter was changing schools, so she would have nowhere to live. He walked around the entire neighborhood, but he was the only one selling the house. Xiaoyang smirked and said that he was too honest. He told everything as it was. Isn't he afraid that he will raise the price? Because of his words, the old man became very worried and said that this was all his savings for 2 generations and asked him not to do this. But MC told him not to worry. The deal was in force. He signed the contract, and Shengbo looked at his signature with a relieved smile, after which he bowed to him and apologized for distracting him from work. He headed for the exit, and Xiaoyang thought that he was a man from the bottom, but kind and honest, and his granddaughter would not last a month in a disaster. Before he left, he asked him to give his current address and then went to the construction site. The foreman talked about further payment, and MC promised to transfer him the money today and asked about the construction. The man led him to the construction and proudly said that it was about 70% complete. Let him look at the walls and doors. There is just perfect protection. For the warehouse, they took an abandoned factory as a basis. Everything is already cleared out, so he can use it. After that, MC called Shenjie and told him to bring in supplies, after which he hired workers to unload everything. While they were putting the supplies on the shelves, they discussed their pay. He pays them 2,000 for such a simple job. One of them remarked that it looked like a real bunker, and his colleague said that he couldn't even imagine how the rich were afraid for their lives. Xiaoyang, meanwhile, was telling what and where to put. He ordered perishable products to be stored separately, and the workers got to work. They finished everything closer to nightfall and went home. And MC looked at the huge number of boxes and thought with a smile that everything was ready. The system gave him a reward for completing the task, and he, opening the store, found that a new box had appeared. For 20 points, he could get a physical enhancement potion, for 2 points a box of Apocalypse Cultivator supplies, and for 10, a Skill Awakening box. He decided to buy the last box, and when he opened it, he received the Mind's Eye skill of the first level, which will help him detect hostile targets. He was very happy. This is one of the most useful skills in the early stages of the disaster. After that, the system reported a new task, preparing for battle. He needs to arm himself, and as a reward, he will receive 10 points and a random item. Xiaoyang was expecting such a task and was already prepared to do it. Late at night, he went to the black market, where they were selling various ancient junk and bargaining, trying to drive up the price. While he was walking, he heard a familiar voice nearby and turned around. Shuxiang exclaimed, "Who is selling ice jade bracelets for 2,000? This is an obvious fake. He will only take it for 300. He will still end up in the black, or he will leave." The poor merchant agreed, as long as he stops yelling, and MC thought, did this idiot come here for a fake bracelet? The idiot Kui Jing can easily be fooled by such junk. He noticed a weapons merchant nearby and smiled, because this is what he was looking for. He walked closer and, having examined the dagger, asked the merchant, "Is there anything hard?" He told him that these are the sharpest knives. If he wants something hard, then let him buy a blank and sharpen it himself. He advises him to try a baton first. He said with displeasure that it is not hard at all, and the man asked, is he looking for problems? Suddenly 200,000 yuan came into his account, and Xiaoyang, showing him that it was he who transferred the money to him, asked him not to get excited. He really wants to buy something. After that, the merchant asked his friend Xiaosan to watch the counter and whispered to the buyer that they do not talk about such things on the street, so he led him to his warehouse. After that, he showed him a gun and said that it costs only a couple of thousand, cheap and steel balls cartridges. But MC didn't need that, which made the man confused and showed him a copy of the revolver, which is not inferior to the original. Costs 5,000 yuan, 9mm bullets. Xiaoyong crossed his arms discontentedly and said that he gave him 200,000 in advance. Nothing more suitable? The merchant was slightly confused, and MC with a menacing look said that it was only 10% and he needed weapons for 2 million. The man smiled awkwardly and asked why he came to him with an order of such a level, and he answered him that before such trivial matters were handled by his subordinates. But everything has changed a little. Then the arms dealer asked him to wait a minute, after which he turned off the light and, looking out the window, said that he had come to the right place. Let him write a list. He will give him the address. To complete the deal, let him come the day after tomorrow at midnight with cash. After that, they both went outside and Xiaoyong bumped into Shuxiong, who said that he never thought to meet him here. Now it's clear where he throws money around. He still ignores Kuijing. Are there really a couple of family heirlooms at home? Does he want to imitate people who sell all their things to live in comfort for a while? MC suddenly had the idea to test the skill and he activated it, after which a display of their attitude towards him appeared above the men's heads. The merchant was friendly, but Shuxiang was the opposite. After that, he pointed to the bag in the man's hands and asked, "Is he going to deceive Kuijing with this trash? It suits her very well." Because of this, Shuxiang became very angry and his attitude towards him immediately changed, and the merchant asked, "Is he his acquaintance?" He answered him that he was his enemy, and the guy, approaching his guys, said that they would deal with him, and MC asked them not to kill him. He had other plans for him. After that, the merchant went to the man and he nervously backed away, starting to threaten them, but when he saw the weapons in their hands, he simply offered to talk to them. Soon they laid the beaten Shuxiang on the floor, and he cursed Xiaoyong in his thoughts. 2 days passed. Late at night, a truck arrived at Xiaoyong's warehouse, completely filled with boxes of weapons and ammunition. Thus, he completed the task and along with 10 points received a potion that increases physical strength by 2 units. He was very happy with such a gift, after which, he stabbed the needle into his arm and injected the potion. When it spread throughout his body, he felt the strength begin to fill him. Clenching his hand into a fist, he noticed that an ordinary adult's strength was about 5, and with this potion it increased by 40%. After that, he opened the system store, where they were selling a potion that increased physical strength by 1 unit and a box of Apocalypse cultivator supplies. He decided to use this advantage to the limit, after which he bought a potion and injected it into himself again. Now he had 8 points of physical strength, an increase of 60%. He decided to test it, and seeing some rebar nearby, he kicked it with all his might and bent it, then threw it at the wall with such force that cracks appeared along it. Now no one will be able to harm him. He can't even be afraid of zombies at the beginning of the apocalypse. He decided to hide the weapon in the spatial ring, because it is much safer there, and all the boxes from the truck moved to it. The day after tomorrow there will be a catastrophe, and MC looked around, wondering what he has left to do now. He remembered the old man and his granddaughter, and frowned, then warily clutched his head and thought that even after surviving the apocalypse and being reborn, it was hard for him to ignore people in trouble. He decided to send them the bare minimum of supplies. Whether they could survive was no longer up to him. He would consider this compensation for the costs of his apocalypse plan. In the morning, Xiaoyong went to the address he had found out from the old man, and driving into a dirty alley, he said that such slums could not be found without a navigator. Entering the house and starting to climb the stairs, he thought that it seemed that this old man was really not rich, since he lived in such a cheap place and on the top floor. He was about to knock on the door, but suddenly realized that it would be better to get the supplies now, otherwise he would have to explain himself later. He took out the boxes of supplies from the ring and then knocked on the door, and Shengbo looked out of the apartment, thinking that someone had come to extort rent from him again, but when he saw Xiaoyong, he was surprised. He also noticed a pile of boxes and asked what he was doing. The MC told him that he would explain everything later, and asked him to drag the boxes inside before the neighbors saw. Once they were done with this, the old man said that the youth was so strong. He was not even tired. Xiaoyong quickly looked around and noticed that the doors here were quite strong, after which he told the old man with a serious expression to listen to him very carefully. Let him use these supplies wisely, then he will last 6 months. He was about to tell about the apocalypse, but suddenly his gaze fell on a family photo and Shengbo asked, "What's wrong?" He could have kept these supplies with him. They were moving in a month anyway. MC looked at the photo of the old man with his granddaughter and he recognized her. She was one of his friends, Shanshan. He asked the old man if his granddaughter's name was Shanshan. He was surprised that he knew her name because he hadn't talked about her, and Xiaoyong asked where she was now. He told him that she was at school now. She was going to transfer to a new one when they moved to his house, so the papers were almost ready. MC remembered how she blamed herself for her grandfather's death. In his past life, he went to the destroyed school to save her, but he died himself. He decided to make up for her regrets in this life and told the old man that they would not move to a new house. He was indignant because he thought that he had decided not to move anywhere. And then Xiaoyong told him that tomorrow this world would turn into hell. Neither his house nor his granddaughter's transfer to a new school would be important anymore. Now they would go together to get her. He would prepare a place for them. Shengbo looked at him in confusion. He didn't understand at all what he was talking about. MC mentally began to blame him for being slow-witted and wondered how to explain everything to him. It was a pity that Xiaoyong did not understand that all his words sounded like the ravings of a madman. He tried to explain everything to the old man without touching on the topic of the apocalypse, and asked, does he understand what a great famine is? Does he imagine how terrible and tragic life is when famine comes? He hesitantly confirmed this and noted that now is a peaceful time. Where would famine come from? Unexpectedly for him, MC stretched out his hand to the side and all his furniture from the supply box was pulled into a ring, and he, not believing his eyes, looked around and exclaimed, what kind of magic is this? Then Xiaoyong told him that he has a superpower. He can see the future. If he wants to live and save his granddaughter, then let him listen. Where is her school? After that, they got into the car. Shengbo still looked at him like he was crazy, and they drove to school. MC jumped out of the car and asked the old man to take him to her class. Meanwhile, Shanshan encountered some envious and jealous girls and a gang of bullies. One of them slapped her in the face, exclaiming that she didn't understand what Zhang Xiaochen saw in her. She told her that she did say that she wouldn't date him. He was the one who insisted on it. Then the girl's friend kicked her in the stomach and exclaimed, did she ask for an excuse? She grabbed her hair and asked, does she mean to say that he was the one who hit on her and she rejected him? Suddenly, the old man's voice was heard. They turned around and asked, is this her useless grandfather? Shanshan called out to him worriedly and asked what he was doing there, so he stood up to protect his granddaughter. But some hooligans with guns appeared on his way and told him to leave. The young ones will deal with it themselves. But Shengbo was very angry and attacked one of them, exclaiming, where are their parents looking? How can they bully their classmates? Then the friend of the guy he attacked decided to hit him on the head with a bat, but Xiaoyong stopped him in time and asked, does he want to become a murderer at such a young age? The hooligans were curious where this tramp came from, and they thought that it was Shanshan's brother. After that, MC kicked one of them and threw him a few meters away, which made his comrades nervous. But despite this, they decided to attack him, and Xiaoyong threw them a displeased look while they surrounded him. The guy with the bat, who came up behind him, pounced on him and attacked, but he ducked in time and noticed that his reaction speed increased along with his strength. Grabbing the bully, he threw him on his back to the ground, which made him feel really bad, and then his friend pounced on him with a knife. MC reacted quickly. He took his hand to the side, after which he swung his leg and hit the offender under the knee, which made him immediately fall and hit his head on the ground. He dealt with the bullies, only the girls remained. Seeing that he was approaching them, one of them got very nervous and asked what he was going to do. The answer was not long in coming. She immediately got hit in the face, and he grabbed her friend by the head and asked, she likes to drag people by the hair, right? She squealed and asked him to let her go, but when he put a knife to her neck, she got very scared and asked what he wanted to do. Suddenly, he waved the knife and then her loud scream was heard. Xiaoyong looked at this girl with hatred, and her friend was shocked. The bully fell to her knees in shock. It turned out he cut her hair. She started crying loudly and exclaimed in rage, how could he do this? She will not leave it so easily. He threw her cut hair on the ground and said that it will only bother her. Of course, she did not understand what he was talking about, and he told her that she will understand in a couple of days. A short haircut can save her life. He called out to Shanshan and her grandfather and told them to follow him, and she asked where they were going. After that, they got in the car and hit the road. Her grandfather told her everything, but she was only worried about the fact that they wouldn't be going back to school. He exclaimed that the big city was coming soon. There was no point in school, only survival came first. Of course, she didn't believe him and accused him of getting involved with some scammers again and asked him to tell her what nonsense they had told him this time. Looking at them through the rearview mirror, MC smiled and thought that she would be safe in this life. He intervened in the conversation and told her that her grandfather hadn't been deceived. The information about the famine was from him. She looked at him slightly surprised and asked who he was anyway, after which he told her his name and she thanked him for his help. He told her not to worry so much. They didn't have much time left anyway, and she asked what he was talking about. Is it true that there will be a famine? He told her that he made up this story to make it easier to convince the old man, and she smirked, saying that she thought so. After all, these are peaceful times. But when he said that they were expecting an apocalypse, she opened her mouth wide in shock, and he asked her to watch videos and the news on her phone, so she would understand if he was right. She immediately rushed to check everything and saw a video of how the subway security detained a madman who had just bitten someone, and he also smelled really weird. She turned on another video. There was also someone biting, and they asked him why he was doing it, to which he replied that he could not resist it and that he felt very bad. Xiaoyong said that the first signs had already appeared, and Shanshan, starting to believe him, exclaimed, "Is this really the beginning of the apocalypse?" He told her that tomorrow would be the first day. A thick, toxic fog would envelop several provinces, and the effect of it would manifest itself on living beings. A significant portion of the population will mutate into zombies. The rest will be in danger and will become one of them after death. She is young. She knows what zombies are? She told him that she knows about them, but it is hard for her to believe it. He told her that this week will be enough for her to believe it, and soon they caught up with the rest of the cars that were stuck in a traffic jam. He wanted to pull into the emergency lane, but it was also blocked, and Shengbo asked what would happen if they got stuck here and a zombie appeared, to which he told him not to worry, it was not that urgent. He nervously looked out the window and thought that they had a few days until the situation was under control. But what if zombies appeared somewhere nearby? Suddenly, a black car appeared behind them in the emergency lane, trying to cut into the lane between them and another car. Xiaoyong braked urgently and hissed through his teeth in displeasure that he was an idiot. He didn't even turn on the turn signal. He decided not to give in so easily and drove up close to the car, after which the driver tried to get in again, and he looked at him with displeasure, asking, "Does he not want to give in? Is he still going to try to squeeze in?" Having driven up very close, the driver opened the window and started shouting some curses, and the old man told Xiaoyong that he seemed like some kind of rich man. They should better avoid trouble for now. He told him not to worry. He would send him flying if he tried to get out of the car. Finally, the traffic jam cleared up and they drove on. They stood there for an hour. Shanshan suddenly noticed that that car was trying to cut them off again, and MC got very angry, exclaiming that he was asking for it, after which the driver of the black car abruptly pulled out in front of him and braked, which scared Shengbo very much, and noticing that he was deliberately braking in front of them, asked Xiaoyong not to be the same. He replied that in the past he would have let him go, but tomorrow the apocalypse would begin. There was no point in forgiving such idiots anymore. Without slowing down, he hit the car in the rear, and its driver lost control, and the car was pulled to the side, and then it crashed into the guardrail. From the impact, everything under the hood started smoking, and the driver, clutching his head, got out of the car, after which he called the police and asked them to look at the footage from the cameras. He needed the car's license plate. Looking after his offender, he shouted that he would still show him that they were not to be trifled with. By evening, they arrived at the factory, and the old man and his granddaughter got out of the car and looked around in surprise, saying that this was too cool. MC advised them to rest, since hard days would begin tomorrow. Morning came. MC was standing by the window and looking at the landscape, and Shanshan came up to him, saying that she had not slept like this for a long time. Skipping morning classes is so cool. He smiled and invited her to look around their fortress, after which they went to pick up her grandfather, and he began to give a tour. The walls are made of solid concrete. The gates are made of pure steel and are controlled remotely, 3 centimeters thick. It doesn't matter if they are humans or zombies, they won't be able to break through without powerful weapons. He told them with a serious expression that only 3 people can be here without his permission, and that is them. Shanshan asked in surprise, "Does that mean that if there are survivors who get here, they will just leave them to die?" He was in no hurry to answer her question and suggested that they move on. So they came to the bridge leading to the watchtower, and he said that during the apocalypse, it is difficult to predict human behavior. If they trust people with ulterior motives, they will die themselves. Looking at the view from the bridge, Shanshan and her grandfather opened their mouths in surprise, and Xiaoyong pointed to a small fenced area below and said that this was a buffer zone to serve as a temporary shelter if he was not there when someone came. But no one was allowed to enter the fortress under any circumstances. Did they understand everything? They confirmed this, and then he decided to show them the food warehouse and explain how to distribute everything. When they entered the warehouse, he decided to test their attitude towards him, and seeing the smiling emoji above their heads, he thought, "Is this a sign of trust?" This is the first time he has seen this. Taking out boxes of weapons from the spatial ring, he handed them out to them, and said that weapons are the most important thing during the apocalypse. They must always control themselves and listen only to themselves. Taking the gun, Shengbo excitedly agreed with him, and suddenly the system gave Xiaoyong a quest. A series of quests called Former Partners Part 1 was activated. He needs to find and save Zhangqi, his old partner. He will get 20 points for completing it. This task excited him very much, and fortunately, the system even showed him exactly where to look for him. He immediately rushed to search and asked them not to forget the rules, and when the girl asked where he was going, he jumped into the car and told her that he would go for the people. They needed to assemble a team. By evening, he arrived at a karaoke bar, where Zhangqi was just relaxing with friends. Completely drunk, he and his friend Bai went to the toilet and said that he hoped he would not have to wait forever for him, because of a kidney problem. His friend jokingly sent him to hell, and after a while, when they came out of the toilet, Zhangqi accidentally bumped into some guy's girlfriend with his shoulder and immediately apologized to her. But her boyfriend did not like it very much and he kicked him, telling him to watch where he was going. From this, he fell to the floor and hit his back against the wall, and his friend worriedly checked his condition, after which he turned to the man and exclaimed discontentedly, "What is he doing? Why is he hitting him right away?" But the man was very angry. He flexed his fists and asked who allowed him to open his mouth. He grabbed him by the clothes and lifted him off the floor, from which Zhangqi excitedly ran up to him and asked them for forgiveness, saying that he was guilty, so let him not hit him. Meanwhile, a waiter appeared in the corridor. He blew his nose into a handkerchief, thinking that it was not enough that he had a stomachache. Now he also had a cold. Noticing the fight, he thought with annoyance, can at least one of them not swear for a minute? He hurried to resolve the situation and asked the man to calm down, but he also grabbed him by the clothes and asked, does he at least know who he is? Even his boss would not touch him. The karaoke worker looked at the guys and gestured for them to leave, and the man ordered him to call the owner right now. He would definitely close this bar. Zhangqi and his friend started running and burst into the room. One of their friends, named Chen Chong, noticing how heavily they were breathing, asked if a dog was chasing them. Where were they in such a hurry? Bai told them that they ran into some thug. He got drunk and wanted to beat them up. They were lucky that the waiter intervened to smooth things over. Chong immediately stood up and indignantly asked why they didn't hit him back. Did their engineering class ever give up? He would call his bros right now. They would sort this out quickly. Zhangqi asked him to calm down. There was less than a year left until graduation, so he shouldn't look for trouble. He suggested that they continue their fun, but soon, the same man burst into the room, dragging the beaten waiter along with him. The four friends looked at them with concern, and the man pointed his finger at them and ordered his guys to grab them. After which, they were seated on the floor with their hands behind their heads. Meanwhile, the poor waiter was writhing in pain on the couch, and suddenly Chong started threatening them. But the man grabbed the nearest bottle of alcohol from the table and hit him on the head, asking who gave him permission to speak. Zhangqi called out to his friend worriedly, and at that very moment, an MC drove up to the karaoke bar. Getting out of the car, he smirked. His friend was still in college and already hanging out at bars. The karaoke workers invited him to come inside. Meanwhile, poor Chong was bleeding on the floor. Enjoying the sight, the man hugged his girlfriend and asked if she felt better now. She replied with displeasure that it was not actually him who pushed her, and then her boyfriend pointed at Zhangqi and asked, was it him? Suddenly, Chong quickly stood up. He was not going to give in like that, and, grabbing an ashtray from the table, wanted to attack their offender. But his guys grabbed his arms and asked, does he still want to fight? The man gritted his teeth in displeasure and said that he didn't think he was that brave, after which he hit him on the head again, and he immediately fell unconscious. Now his friends didn't hold back either. Zhangqi and Bai pounced on them, and while they were arguing, their friend was sitting on the floor near the sofa and covering his ears in fear. While they were fighting, the waiter got up, but for some reason his skin turned purple and his veins bulged. Zhangqi, meanwhile, was trying to fight off the guys and hit them with a swing with his fist. And when one of his opponents shouted something again, the waiter reacted to the noise and pounced on them like a madman, after which he bit one of the guys. He screamed in pain and asked his comrades to move him away. Meanwhile, Yiming was in complete horror. One of the guys tried to unhook the waiter from his friend, but he still didn't want to let him go, and suddenly he turned around sharply and bit into his hand. Since he was stronger, he was able to push him to the floor, but suddenly Xiaoyong appeared. He grabbed the waiter, who had just turned into a zombie, by the neck and lifted him off the floor, then slammed his head against the TV and ordered everyone to stop the fight right now. The bitten guy looked at him and thought that this mad guy looked like a bull, and he grabbed him with one hand. The leader of all these hooligans asked him with displeasure who he was, but MC ignored him and asked Zhangqi. He wasn't bitten, right? He confirmed it in confusion and he asked him to follow him. But the man suddenly grabbed his shoulder and said that they weren't done yet. Then one of his bitten guys grabbed his head in pain and he worriedly asked, "Has his cold come back?" Xiaoyang looked at him suspiciously. He noticed a bite on his shoulder and asked, "He was bitten, right?" He confirmed this, and he, noticing that the virus was spreading quickly throughout his body, assumed that he was already infected. So now there was a bite, and so close to his head. Soon, it would start to mutate. After that, he headed for the exit, dragging the waiter with him. He threw him into the toilet and closed the door. The infected man immediately began to knock, trying to get out, and he noted that they did not yet know how to open doors. This is very good. After shaking off his hands, he flexed his fists and asked Zhangqi which of them should be eliminated. He did not understand what he was talking about and why he was helping them at all. They did not even know each other, but the boss of these bandits got very angry because of his words and attacked him with his fists. But he also grabbed his head and slammed the back of his head on the glass table. The infected man pounced on him in rage, but Xiaoyang knocked him out with just one punch. He fell unconscious on the floor and foam started coming out of his mouth, after which his friend asked worriedly, what was wrong with him? Did he pass out from one punch? Meanwhile, MC asked, who else wants to try his fist? Let them come. Since there were no more volunteers, he told Zhangqi to take his friends and wait outside the room, after which they took the injured Chong outside. The man, along with his passion and the hooligans, also wanted to leave, but MC blocked their way and asked, is he so drunk that he doesn't even remember his name? He almost killed his friend. The man got very angry and ordered him to get out of the way, but he pushed him in the chest, knocking him to the floor, after which he left the room and closed the door. The guy knocked on it in a rage and started threatening him so that he would open the door, and by this time one of his subordinates had already become a zombie. With an animalistic roar, he pounced on the boss, and Xiaoyang stood outside and held the door, listening to them. Judging by their screams, the waiter managed to get out of the toilet and also attacked them. Hearing the noise, the karaoke worker approached Xiaoyang and asked what was the matter, and he ordered him to lock this door and not let anyone in. Let him call the police or the hospital. There is an attack of rage. He hesitated at his words, but when the MC ordered him to hurry, he realized the seriousness of the situation and locked the door with a key, and in the meantime, he led Zhangqi and his friends. The karaoke worker listened to the screams inside and said that there were two strange sounds in there. Then his colleague came up to him and asked what happened. He told him about the outbreak of rage, and since his colleague had already heard about it, they decided not to go inside, but to check the cameras. As soon as they entered the security room, their faces distorted from the terrible sight on the monitor. Zombies were eating people alive, and the workers decided to call the police. MC meanwhile put the guys in the car and then drove them to the factory. Zhangqi thanked him for his help and asked who he was. He told him his name and lied that he was hired to protect him. But who is a secret? Yiming worriedly asked what rabies he was talking about. The internet said that it was fake. Then MC in response asked, does he mean to say that he did not see what was happening in that room? Bai asked if there was any treatment, and he told them that the epidemic will only get worse. The current world is doomed. Suddenly, a scream was heard from the side, and they looked out the windows. A zombie outside attacked a passerby, and they were convinced that all this was true. MC said that it was a local outbreak for now, but most people had already become carriers. Things would soon get out of control, so if they wanted to survive, they had to listen to his commands. They all agreed, and at that moment, the system reported that the quest had been completed. Since he had received a reward of 20 points, he decided to check the store. The Apocalypse Cultivator's supply box had not disappeared, and he thought that it seemed like he would either have to buy it or spend points to manually upgrade it. Everything seemed useful and inexpensive, so it would be useful in the fortress. After dealing with the store, he glanced at Zhangqi and thought that the only thing left was a trust issue. In his previous life, the entire dorm where he lived was destroyed by zombies because of the betrayal of his close friend. The question is, which one of them is that friend? Meanwhile, Kuijin called Shuxiong and asked when the supplies he was talking about would arrive. The street was so chaotic, she was even afraid to go out to the store. He told her that he would send her everything when he was free. Then suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door, causing her to scream in fear. Shuxiong asked what was wrong, and she carefully approached the door, telling him that someone had come, so she was hanging up. She looked through the peephole, expecting the worst, then opened the door and seeing her friend at the threshold, she sighed with relief and asked why she was knocking so loudly. She had scared her. She immediately told her that Uncle Lee had been taken from the first floor. She didn't know where exactly, but she had seen the police and the ambulance. She closed the door and Jing thoughtfully said that now she understood where all the noise was coming from. Shia said that it seemed that this rabies flu was not just a horror story. Xiong brought groceries. When she found out that he hadn't done it yet, she cursed and said that she had told her that men couldn't be trusted. Let her call him and tell him that Xiaoyong had a lot of supplies. He was originally planning to make money from this epidemic. Jing was curious about how she knew this, and she told her that she went to his new house, but he drove her away. She had seen food trucks going there. Her friend realized that he knew that the epidemic would happen, and Xia asked her again to call Xiong. He would handle everything. If Xiaoyong suddenly sold everything, they would force him to give most of the money to them. Meanwhile, MC had already arrived at the factory. The guys got out of the car and looked around, and Zhangqi said with delight that this place was incredible, like a real fortress. MC smiled and agreed with him. Everyone reacted like this for the first time. The current residents of the fortress came out to greet them and asked Xiaoyong if everything was okay, and he nodded towards the new arrivals and told them not to worry. He would now introduce the new team members. He pointed to Zhangqi and said his name and said that he and his classmates would be staying here. He introduced Shanshan and her grandfather to the guys, and they warmly welcomed them to the fortress. After that, MC asked Shengbo to pick up a couple of the guys and show them around and explain their rules, and Bai looked around nervously, noting that this looked like northern Myanmar. Suddenly, Yiming raised his hand and asked if he could give him a gun. Then they could defend this place too. Xiaoyong gave him a displeased look in response, and Bai whispered to him not to rush. They needed to gain his trust first. MC told them not to worry, they would get the guns in a few days. He turned his attention to their injured friend and noted that his injuries were pretty serious, so he should take a look at him in the infirmary for now. Once the tour was over, the guys started to get settled. The first thing they did was take a bath, and Yiming asked Bai displeasedly why he stopped him. Maybe they could have gotten the guns right away. That would be the best way to defend themselves. They were basically under house arrest. Confused, Bai reminded him that they were the ones who saved them, and he asked, but why would they do that? Zhangqi reminded him that Xiaoyong was hired to protect them, and he asked who exactly hired him. He didn't even say that, so it might be a lie. Gritting his teeth in anger, he told him to look at how they were treating Chong. This wasn't an infirmary, it was a real prison. What if they were going to take his organs? So they had to strike first. Bai said he might be wrong. Why would they betray their savior? He told him that it was better to do it first than wait for them to betray him. If he told the truth, they would take over the fortress and rule it themselves. But there were only that guy, the old man, and the girl here. They would attack when Xiaoyong was not around. He had seen how cute she was. He grinned unkindly and was about to say what they could do to her, but seeing their shocked faces, he realized he had to shut up and laughed nervously, making the excuse that it was a joke. Zhangqi sighed in relief and asked him not to scare them like that anymore. The apocalypse had not yet begun, and he was already going to break the laws. Bai agreed with him and added that if they wanted to take their organs, they would have locked everyone up at once. They had weapons. After finishing all the business in the shower, they left, and Yiming looked after them, realizing that there was no point in negotiating with them. In times like these, only the cruel will rule. When he gets his way, they will become his pawns for the rest of their lives. Soon Shengbo and his granddaughter came to MC, and the old man told him that Zhangqi and the others had already settled in. They put the wounded man in the infirmary. The doors and windows were closed, as he asked. MC smiled and thanked him, saying that they can rest. Who knows what they will face tomorrow. Before they left, he asked them to keep an eye on not only the injured man, but also on Zhangqi's other classmates. He has a feeling that there will be a traitor among them. Late at night, MC went to the warehouse and opened the item shop, then bought a cultivator box, a supply box, and another one called armed deterrents. In the end, he only had 8 points left. The cultivator box contains 50 corn seeds. Inside the supply box, there are 200 kilograms of starch sausage, 100 kilograms of stewed pork with vegetables, and 50 boxes of sauerkraut noodles. And the ammunition box contains 1,500 rounds of 9mm ammunition. Looking at the huge pile of things, he thought that money was more useful now, but after the apocalypse, such a reward would be irreplaceable. Soon, morning came. 3 cars drove up to the factory and stopped at the gate. The same rich man whose car Xiaoyong rammed called someone and said that he was already there. Let him check the address again. While they were talking, his subordinates armed themselves and got out of the cars. And he, having learned that he had arrived at the right address, thanked his informant and promised him a joint dinner. After that, he ordered the bandits to break into the fortress, and they, like fools, began to beat with bats and kick at the iron gates, after which one of them told the boss that the thickness here was several centimeters. They would not break through it. The rich man got very angry and asked who put such doors in an ordinary house. Then he ordered them to drag here the boxes that contained wine. They made Molotov cocktails out of it and threw them over the wall, because of which a fire quickly broke out inside. Seeing this, Shanshan and the others immediately ran to put out the fire and said that Xiaoyong was right. The disaster has not happened yet, and it is already such an extreme situation. Meanwhile, MC and Sheng Bo went outside with weapons and decided to climb the tower to see who was looking for trouble. The old man noticed that this car looked familiar, and when he remembered that rich man, he became very worried and said that this is the guy who wanted to cause an accident on the highway. One of the bandits noticed them and told the boss that they were over there, after which he shouted in rage that he would burn his house if he did not come out. Xiaoyong threatened him that he had 5 minutes to take his people and get out of here. Of course, they got angry and began to threaten him back with their boss, and at this moment, the system gave a new task called a regular threat. Since the base is under attack, he needs to destroy the threat as soon as possible. As a reward, he will receive 10 points. The old man asked what they were going to do. Should he fire a warning shot? The MC took out his gun and told him that they were bandits. The law was still in effect, and they were already doing something like this. They didn't care if someone burned alive here or not. They would only hurt innocent people if they left them alive. He took aim and then shot the rich man in the arm, depriving him of it, and he fell to his knees in pain and screamed loudly. It turned out that Xiaoyong missed. He was aiming at his head. Seeing that they had a gun, they immediately started to run, but the rich man promised that he would be back. The MC decided to end it now. He shot at all the bandits, but only a few of them managed to get into the car with their boss, and he ordered the driver to drive at full speed. Shengbo noticed that they were trying to escape in the car, and Xiaoyong told him not to worry, so he took the machine gun. After that, he opened fire, piercing several windows, then reloaded the gun, and the old man looked at him nervously, thinking that he was aiming and reloading smoothly. He couldn't do it that easily, even in the army. Who is he? After that, he fired again, and the screams of the bandits were heard, and finally everyone was destroyed. Seeing that the threat was over, MC asked the old man to call Zhang Qi and the others to clean up the corpses, but suddenly stopped and thought that this was the early stage of the disaster. Maybe he should turn them into zombies so that the others could practice? He immediately changed his mind and told the old man that they would not rush. They would just leave them on the road. After a while, Shuxiang, along with his girlfriend and her friend, were heading towards them. The man asked if they were almost there. Xia smiled and said that he would need to turn at the next intersection. Meanwhile, Kuijing glanced at her and noticed that she always acted like this when Shuxiang was around. She thinks she didn't notice it. Once they reached the fortress, Shuxiang stopped nearby and told Kuijing that he would wait here and that she should call him when she got inside. She got out of the car and called her friend to come with her, causing her to ask in confusion, did she have to go? She confirmed that she did, and asked in displeasure, how would she know where the factory was? Her friend told her to just walk straight ahead. She would see it right away. She tried to dissuade her by citing her uncomfortable shoes, and she grabbed her hand and pulled her out of the car, telling her that she didn't care about it, and asked her to at least let her take her phone and bag, but she didn't agree. Watching the girls move away, Shuxiang called his guys and told them to get ready. Tell them to step on the gas immediately when his car starts moving. Meanwhile, the bandit leader, who was sitting in the other car, looked at the guys and said that he understood everything. Meanwhile, Xia asked Kuijing why she dragged her into this. She responded by calling her a sly fox and said that she would not fall for her petty tricks, and she exclaimed that she got it all wrong. She dressed up to pick up that loser. After all, he already knows about her and Shuxiang. Kuijing suddenly stopped, noticing something wrong ahead, and seeing the corpses, Xia asked in fear, what happened here? Was there a shootout? She clung to her friend out of fear and told her to look. They were all dead. Maybe it's better to go back? Kuijing noticed that the blood was old. Some time had passed. 2 groups clashed in a fight for Xiaoyang's supplies. She decided to check if he was alive at all and what was going on with the supplies, but Xia objected, suggesting that she better go back and ask Shuxiang to sort everything out. But Shanshan first wanted to at least check if the doors were locked. And at that very moment, the rich man lying in the car woke up, but already as a zombie. The girls approached the gate, and Shuya noticed that they had locked it so tightly that there wasn't even a crack. Shanshan assumed that since everything was closed, Xiaoyong was fine, and suddenly Shanshan's voice came from the observation tower, pointing a crossbow at them and asking how they found this place. Shuya told her that they were Xiaoyong's friends, and Kuijing added that she was his girlfriend, after which Shanshan called him and told him about them. Meanwhile, Kuijing gritted her teeth in anger and said that now she understood why he had changed so abruptly. He just found someone else. Her friend advised her not to show dissatisfaction. They had an important task. She has a crossbow. Is Xuxiong sure that he can handle it? She told her not to worry, they have several pistols, so they can easily deal with Xiaoyong once they open the doors. A few minutes later, MC came to the tower and asked what they were doing there. Then he used his skill and found out that they were unkind to him, but did not show it. Xia called him with a smile and asked, "Can't friends visit without a reason?" There was such chaos outside. They were worried about him. Xiaoyong laughed at her words and asked, "Is Xuxiong somewhere nearby? How many people did he bring, and with what weapons?" Realizing that he already knew everything, they were very surprised, and their reaction only confirmed their intentions. After that, MC opened fire, but specifically aimed at their legs. Because of this, Kuijing got angry and exclaimed, "Is he crazy?" He almost shot her. Her friend asked her not to provoke him. "He has a gun?" To which she exclaimed, "Does she think he will shoot her?" Xiaoyong laughed and told her that it would be too easy, and suddenly someone's heavy breathing was heard behind the girls. They turned around. There were zombies right in front of them, and this made them very nervous. And when the MC said that they would die at their hands, the zombies rushed to attack with a loud scream and wanted to jump on them, but they managed to run to the side. While they were running, Kuijing called out to Xuxiong and asked him to save her. Seeing that the girls were leading a crowd of zombies, he became very nervous, after which he contacted the bandits on the radio and told them to turn around. He did not wait for them and quickly drove away, which made Kuijing very angry and called him a freak, and then swung her bag and screamed that she did not want to die like that. She threw the bag at her friend and the strap of it wrapped around her leg, causing her to fall, and the zombies immediately chose her as their target. She looked at them in horror, and when they all fell on her at once and began to devour her alive, she screamed loudly in pain and cursed her friend, and meanwhile she continued to run forward, trying not to turn around, and with a nervous smile repeating that she deserved it. Meanwhile, the system reported the completion of the task and the creation of a new one. Now he needs to remove the monsters and infected around the base. For this, he will receive 10 points. Shanshan was shocked by what happened. She looked at Xiaoyong and worriedly asked, "Are they turning into zombies?" He told her that this is the beginning of the apocalypse. There are a lot of infections from other worlds in the air. The dead left on the street will quickly turn into zombies, and some of the living will only need serious injury or exhaustion. After that, he went back to the building and asked her to call everyone for a meeting. They all gathered in one room, and he told them that they would be staying inside for the next couple of days. The doors and windows would be tightly closed. The body needed time to adapt to the new infection. This way, they could reduce the risk of mutation. Zhang Qi was upset. He was very worried about his friend, and in the meantime, he was lying in a completely isolated room and the infection was slowly spreading throughout his body, which made him feel very bad. Time passed. Complete chaos had already begun to happen on the streets of the city, and Shenjie, who looked out the window, thought the same thing. He told his wife Xiao Li and son named Shui Shui that he would have to go to the warehouse at night to collect the remaining supplies. They would stay at home, so let them not open the door to anyone except him under any circumstances. At that moment, there was a loud knock. He turned around and realized that someone was banging on the door, after which he told his wife and child to be quiet. Grabbing a golf club, he walked closer, and Yang Tao's voice came from behind the door, asking if he was home. He sighed in relief and opened the door, but suddenly one of Yang Tao's subordinates hit him in the chest and knocked him to the floor, and the others began to hold him down. Yang Tao walked closer and looked down at him, and he exclaimed, "What the hell is he doing? He treated him so well." He smirked and reminded him that he considered him his lackey, and he asked, "Has he lost his conscience? Who helped him save up for the down payment on a house?" Yang Tao indignantly said that it was just the down payment, and he had earned enough for several houses. Let him stop talking and give him the address and keys to the warehouse. But Shenjie was not going to do this and gritted his teeth in frustration. Then Yang Tao walked towards his family and asked, "Is he going to be stubborn like this?" He grabbed his wife by the hair and told him to look at it carefully. Then the child pounced on him with tears in his eyes and told him to let go of his mother immediately. He bit his hand, which made him very angry, and he slapped him in the face, throwing him aside. Shenjie became very angry and called them idiots, ordering them to attack him. Let them leave his wife and child alone. Yang Tao smiled and told him not to worry. They were safe as long as he cooperated with them, so let him lead them to his warehouse. After that, they arrived at the warehouse and lifted the gate, and Yang Tao, looking at the meager supplies, asked, "Is that all?" The man asked, "Has he already forgotten how he found a big customer himself, and they sold everything to him?" There was almost no expired goods left. His words made Yang Tao think about it, Then he said with a smirk that they would have enough food for a lifetime if they could get to the supplies in his factory. Shengji advised him not to get involved in this matter. He accidentally saw the weapon when he was delivering food to him. That guy was definitely preparing for this disaster. Yang Tao told him that it was his problem, and he asked in confusion what he was talking about. He explained to him that he wanted to exchange the safety of his wife and son for Xiaoyang's food. It was a good deal, right? Realizing that he had no choice, the man gritted his teeth, and in the meantime, all the inhabitants of the fortress went to the infirmary to check on Chong's condition. The infection had spread throughout his body, and now he was acting like the rest of the zombies, screaming loudly and twitching, trying to break free from the shackles. This sight made his friends burst into tears. Only Yiming looked at it with a stone face. Realizing the danger they were in, he asked Xiaoyang to kill him, and he looked at him, after which Zhang Qi asked what he just said. Yiming told him that he was already a corpse. If he somehow escaped, then everyone else would be in danger. Bai exclaimed that he was their friend. He just decided to abandon him? MC told him that he was right. The transformed ones had little chance. After that, he pulled out a dagger and handed it to Yiming, which made him nervous and asked what this meant. MC wanted him to finish him off himself, but the knowledge that he had to do it made him hesitate, so Xiaoyang asked, he wanted a weapon, right? So let him take this and put him out of his misery. But Zhang Qi grabbed the dagger instead, and with a grim expression said that he would do it himself. Xiaoyang asked, is he sure? What if he just tricked them? If he did this, he would become a murderer. But Zhang Qi confidently stated that he trusted him, to which he smirked and told him to go ahead. After that, the guy approached his friend with tears in his eyes and raised a dagger over him. But suddenly there was a notification sound, and the tip froze a couple of centimeters from the zombie's neck. MC stopped him for some reason, which caused his bewilderment, and said that it was time for them to go outside. There was a rather specific situation there. There was still a use for this guy. It turns out that the system said that Chong was a rare mutant, and that's why he left him alive. After they left, he approached the zombie and asked, his name is Chen Chong, right? The guy growled in response, and he, leaning over his face, said that he had an important task for him. Meanwhile, Shengji was heading to his factory, but suddenly his car skidded and he hit a pole, which is why it began to smoke. Getting out of the car, he scratched his head in annoyance and said that he had no luck at all, but at least he got here. A zombie appeared behind him, and he noticed it only when it pounced on him with a loud scream. He didn't have time to react, and the zombie sank its teeth into his hand, after which he pushed it away and ran to the car. Taking out a crowbar from there, he hit the zombie with all his might and knocked it to the ground, and then began finishing it off with blows to the head. As soon as he was done with it, he realized that it was better for him not to linger here, and wandered to the factory. Meanwhile, the zombies at the gate continued to wander back and forth, and all the inhabitants of the fortress now had to deal with them. Shan, who now put on the equipment, told Xiaoyang that it was very inconvenient for her to move, and he explained to her that it would be impossible to negotiate with the zombies. They were much stronger than ordinary people, and it was dangerous. They had little experience and could get injured, so protective equipment was necessary. They would take it off when they were ready. They approached the building, and MC, cautiously looking at the zombie, warned the others that they were in their detection range. They prepared their weapons, and when the zombie looked in their direction, they began to fight. And Xiaoyang advised them to remember what he taught them. Let them cover each other and keep their distance. The zombie jumped on him, and he jumped aside in time and decided not to waste the moment for training and told them that the chance would appear when the zombie missed. Let them aim for the temple or the back of the neck. Bai ran up to the zombie and swung his sword at his head, but he could not pierce it and felt a strong pain in his hand. Xiaoyang explained to him that the skull was very durable. He only injured his hand in vain. His movements are a perfect example of what not to do. At that moment, the zombie pounced on the guy, but he held his sword out in front of him, and the monster began to gnaw on the blade. Trying to push him away, the guy asked for help, and MC noted with a smile that he had already learned to defend himself, after which he called out to Zhang Qi and said that his partner needed help. He immediately appeared behind the zombie and hit him with a bat on the back of the head with all his might, after which they all began to beat the monster to death, and MC told them to continue. Having finished with the zombie, Zhang Qi happily turned to Xiaoyang and asked, "Did they manage?" But he saw that a zombie appeared behind him. He warned him of the danger, and a second before the bite, MC turned around and grabbed the enemy by the head, asking, did they forget what he was talking about? They can't relax until they look around. They all took note of this, and in the meantime, Shen Jie was watching the factory from afar and thought, did those mutants get here too? Did they finish off Xiaoyang too? He suddenly heard someone giving orders and realized it was his voice. He crept up to the car unnoticed and looked at them and thought, did he gather a team and now hunt those mutants? But under the car he was hiding behind, there was also a zombie. It was Shuya. She crawled out from under the car and grabbed the man by the leg, which scared him and made him fall. Seeing that the zombie was already rushing at him, he was very scared and covered his head with his hands. She hung over him and growled, and when he already thought that she would bite him, a shot suddenly rang out. MC got rid of the zombie with a gun, after which the man threw off the corpse and he asked, what is he doing here? Shengje walked up to him and said with relief that he couldn't believe that he was able to get to him. Noticing the bite on his arm, he immediately put the gun to his forehead and he asked him not to shoot. He had something to tell him. Xiaoyong decided to listen to him, and he said with tears in his eyes that he knew that he was infected. He didn't even have half a day left, but that idiot young Tao kidnapped his wife and child. They wanted to use him to take his supplies. He knows that he is not the best person, but he is not completely evil either. His wife and child are innocent. Those animals will not spare anyone. They will suffer a worse fate than him. He began to beg him to help them, at least in gratitude for the supplies he collected for him. MC frowned and thought that he did it for his own benefit, but his help really came in handy. He looked at the people of the fortress and thought that there was a lot of space in the base, but the balance was heavily skewed towards men. Suddenly, the system gave him a task, and he smirked. He needed to save Shengje's wife and child, for which he would receive 25 points, and he also needed to complete the task of clearing the street. Xiaoyong told the man not to worry and promised that he would take care of them. After which Shengje fell to his knees in front of him and bowed his head, saying that in this life he would not have time to repay him for such a thing, so he would become his faithful servant in the next. Resigned to his situation, he asked him to do it, but MC did not understand what he was talking about. It turns out that he wanted him to kill him. He does not want to turn into a monster that will threaten the family. Xiaoyong looked at him for a few seconds, thinking about it, then turned around and told Shanshan that she should get the bicycle from the warehouse. She agreed, and he turned around and said that he should go as far away as possible, avoid people, and find an isolated place. He was surprised by this, and asked why he was doing this. He said that he didn't need to know this. Time was short, so he should do it. Shengje said with a small smile that he understood him and was grateful for that. After that, he got on his bicycle and rode into the city, and his body had already begun to mutate. He cried and worried about his family. The survivors at this time gathered the zombie bodies in one place. They poured gasoline on these bodies, and the protagonist said that he had no strength left at all. They can handle lone zombies in a group of 2 or 3 people with melee weapons without being injured. However, they are not yet ready to face a group or a horde of zombies. He started to leave and said that they should follow him. After that, they all came to a big door together. He turned around and called Sheng Bo, who was standing behind him. He handed him the key and said that this was the weapon room and that he would go to the city at night. The security of the fortress would be in his hands. He took the key and said that there would probably be chaos there. Would he go there alone? Zhangqi and Bai simultaneously said that they wanted to go with him. MC refused them and said that they were not ready yet and would only get in the way. He was counting on him to protect the shelter in his absence. Shengbo wished him luck and said that he did not need to worry about it. Later, he got into the car and put the weapon on the seat next to him. A system window appeared in front of him with an empty store, and he said that it was updating too slowly. This task is difficult, so he will have to update the store manually. He updated the store for 2 points, and the store appeared a level 1 dark technology box, costing 20 points, a level 1 life-saving box costing 5 points, a level 1 armed containment box costing 5 points. Xiaoyong said with a slightly dissatisfied look that manually updating the store became more expensive by 2 points. He had better be careful with this. However, the goods are useful, and he has enough points. He bought the first level dark technology box, and he had 6 points left. There was a bright flash, and the system notified that he had received a +5 physical strength enhancement serum. He covered his face with his hand and said that it felt like a flashbang grenade had exploded in front of his face. He was very surprised by what he got from this box and decided to use it right away. The system notified that his strength was 13 points. At the same time, in Shengje's house, Xiaoli was sitting on the floor next to her son and told him that he didn't have to be afraid because Daddy would sort everything out. At that moment, 2 bandits entered their room. She looked at them with a frightened look and asked why they came here. Yan Tao grabbed her hand and asked her with a big smile, "What does she think?" "Of course, they will have fun." He started to rip her clothes, and she loudly begged them not to do it. He and the second bandit pushed her to the floor and held her down while she tried to resist, and Shui tried to push one of them away. Lee also entered the room with a displeased expression on his face and asked, "What are they doing here?" "They are making too much noise." The bandit looked at him with a smirk and said that he can join them. He said that they still haven't finished the task, and they are already thinking about something like this. They should let her go. This order made him displeased and asked, "What's the problem?" This is not the first time. Lee raised his voice out of anger and asked, "What will they do if she can't take it anymore and kills herself? Her husband will have nothing to lose. He will come to fight to the death, and then not everyone will leave unharmed. They won't even give her a day's rest once they've dealt with him." The two of them walked away from Xiao Li, and the bandit said that he would listen to him this time. Before leaving, Yang Tao stuck his tongue out at her and said that he would be back soon. Sometime later, when night had fallen, the protagonist was still driving along the empty highway towards the city. He thought that 13 points of strength was an increase of more than twice that of an average person. Even his reaction and body control had improved noticeably. He easily drove around all the abandoned cars on the road and said that it felt amazing. He drove for some more distance before stopping and getting out of the car. He thought that the city center was ahead and the car would attract a lot of attention, so he would have to walk. He turned around because of the screams of the zombies and saw two running towards him. He easily dodged the attack of one of them, then swung his hand to counterattack. He grabbed the nearest zombie and threw it with great force at the second one. They started to get up after this attack, and MC took out a machete with his ring. He ran towards them very quickly and cut off their heads with quick strikes. He swung the weapon to brush away the blood and said that he was completely superior to the current zombies in strength and reflexes. Now he understood how different it was from an ordinary person. He thought that even the senses worked better. Suddenly, a system window appeared in front of him, which said that an unexpected meeting had occurred and a random task had been received. At the same time, in the city next to him, a group of survivors were hiding in a store while they were surrounded by zombies. Captain Li Hongli held a gun in his hand and said that they should quickly bring everything heavy. A guy named Zixuan, with tears on his face, called his dad and asked if they were really going to die here. His father Song said that he didn't have to worry, those freaks wouldn't be able to get through anyway. In the worst case, they would soon meet his mother. Because of what he heard, he began to cry and scream loudly in fear. The captain called him with a displeased look and said that he should better watch his words, because their situation is not very good as it is. He looked at him with a displeased look and said that if he knew how to watch his words, he would have become the owner of the property a long time ago. Hongli looked out the window with a displeased look and asked, "Are they really going to die today?" Suddenly, they heard loud sounds from outside and loudly asked what was that. From behind the shelter, they saw a zombie whose head had been cut off. What they saw surprised them very much, and Zixuan fell to the ground because of it. After that, the sounds outside the store died down. Hongli called Song and said that he and his son should remove everything from the exit. They should do it quietly so as not to make a noise. After the two of them removed the barricades, he opened the door slightly, carefully looked out, and saw that all the zombies had already been killed. They all walked out of the store together with different weapons in their hands, and he asked who did all this. Zixuan said with a scared look that they were definitely mutants. His father looked at him and asked what mutants he was talking about. He said that they were ordinary zombies that became stronger and faster. Those are always in games, books, and comics. Song said with a displeased look that now he understood why his grades were so low. Hongli turned to them and said that he had no empathy at all. How can you talk about this in a situation like this? They should monitor the situation. After all, they didn't need to be ambushed by mutants. They started walking slowly down the street, and he said that everyone should look in their own direction. They would slowly walk to the base. They came out of the alley. He raised his hand and said that they should stop. There they saw Xiaoyong, who was looking at the system window with a notification that the random task was completed. He received 5 points. The total points were 11. Zixuan said with a frightened look that it must be a mutant. Hongli looked at him with a calmer look and said that it looked more like a survivor. He turned to them, laughed, and told this boy that he should not imagine too much. For now, mutants are not so easy to meet. The captain was happy about this and said with a smile that it seems like a survivor. He walked up to him and said that it is too dangerous to wander alone. At times like this, it is better to be in a team. He can go with them. The protagonist looked at him and asked who they were. There are only a few people here. Hongli said that they went out to get supplies. A small group of civilians gathered in Rongshan Garden. He asked, "Isn't this the garden next to Jinyu Mansion?" Song agreed and said that it is across the street. He should go with them, after all there are more of them, and the captain has a gun. They have experience in dealing with these psychos. They will be able to protect him. MC laughed, agreed to this proposal, and thanked them. They continued walking together, and Song asked, he seemed to be asking about the Jinyu mansion. Does he want to meet someone important there? Xiaoyong agreed, and he asked, does he want to find a relative or a girlfriend? The old world had come to an end. The chances of survival were not very high. He should mentally prepare for the worst. Hongli agreed with a dissatisfied look and said that even if that man had not been killed by that army of madmen, they could still have encountered those animals. What he said caught his attention, and he asked what animals he was talking about. The captain said that a group of bandits had settled in the area of the Bikushan mansion in the east of the city. They were killing any survivors they came across. They had only encountered them once, but they had lost many comrades. It was better for them not to talk about it. He just had to be careful around the other survivors. Zixuan noticed a zombie ahead and loudly warned him of the danger. Hongli immediately turned around and saw a zombie that was already very close to him. He fired 2 shots to the head and killed the zombie. He immediately knew that they were in trouble because the sounds of gunfire had attracted the attention of the other zombies nearby, and immediately warned the others about it. He looked around with a worried look, trying to think of what to do, and said that they should remain calm. He noticed the bus, and they all ran after it together. The protagonist thought with a small smile that running away in disarray could attract even more zombies, so the bus was a good place to hide. The only downside was that there would be nowhere to retreat from there. He would give this urgent solution 70 points. A zombie was running after him, and Hongli, who had run to the bus, was waiting for him and said loudly that he should catch up with them faster. He managed to run inside. The captain closed the door behind him and said that they should check all the seats to make sure there was no one inside. Zixuan looked out the window and said with a worried look that they were not giving up and were gathering around them. Hongli looked at the crowd of zombies by the bus with a displeased look and said that they were running too slowly. He tried his best to hold the bus door against the crowd of zombies and said that he could not continue to hold them back. He was very surprised that MC came up to him and easily closed the door with one hand. He continued to look at him in surprise and wondered where he got such amazing strength from. He looked at him and said that he would hold the door. The zombies would not be able to open it. He should ask the others to break the windows and fight back. Hongli immediately went to the others and agreed to his plan. They did as he said and broke one of the windows of the bus, which attracted the attention of the zombies nearby. They began to try to climb inside through this window, but Song immediately pierced the head of one of the undead with his rebar. The others held him by his clothes so that he did not fall out of the window. The captain checked his gun and said with a dissatisfied look that he did not have enough bullets for everyone. He immediately turned to Xiaoyong, who called him and asked where he got the crossbow from. He threw him his gun and said that he picked it up on the street. Thanks to this, he and Song were able to kill most of the zombies that surrounded them. After a while, when all the undead were defeated, they all got off the bus together. Zixuan said with a surprised look that the critical situation ended in their favor twice. It was definitely not a coincidence. They are the children of the fate of the apocalypse. The protagonist began to warm up his hands and said that they should not let down their guard anymore, so as not to make such stupid mistakes. At the same time, Yiming said that he hoped that Xiaoyong was doing well. He would like to ask them to let him take over the duty today. Bai pushed him and asked with a smirk, where did he get such enthusiasm? He was indignant about this and said loudly that he shouldn't talk nonsense and interfere in his affairs. He was confused by his reaction and asked why he was reacting so sharply. Shengbo allowed it and said that since he volunteered, everyone else should go to their rooms and rest. He should be attentive and immediately wake everyone up if something happened. After that, Yiming went to the observation tower and said that it was already late and everyone should have fallen asleep. He stood up from his seat and said that he had better not waste time and sort everything out before he came back. After that, he came to the room where Shengbo was sleeping. He walked up to his bed and was about to stealthily take the key. Unexpectedly for him, he woke up, saw him immediately and loudly asked what he was doing here. Yiming was surprised by this but immediately punched him in the head. He took the key and started running down the hallway, and Shengbo loudly called out to this freak and asked what he was trying to do. Because of this, everyone else woke up, came out of their rooms and asked what happened. The old man held his hand to the place reddened from the blow and said that Yiming stole the key to the armory. They should stop him. Everyone else immediately ran after him and loudly asked him to stop. He did not listen to them and threw a bunch of garbage behind him to slow them down. It really worked, and everyone who was chasing him stopped. Yiming ran a little further, saw the infirmary and said that he would go to the end. He went inside and approached Chong, who was chained to the bed. Suddenly, he freed one hand and tried to hit him, but he managed to jump aside. He looked at it and asked why he was tied up so poorly. One knot had already come undone. He looked at the door with a sly smile and said that this would save him from having to untie it himself. After a while, the others finally dealt with the obstacle, continued the pursuit, and saw Chong standing in the corridor. Zhang Qi was surprised by this and said that this freak let him out of the quarantine zone. Does he really want to kill them? Shengbo said that he didn't even guess that this guy would be like this. Shanshan stood next to him and asked what they were going to do. All the weapons were in there. He said that they should try to lock him back. They should disperse. They should use the methods they were taught earlier. They must not let themselves be bitten. After that, they all started walking towards Chong from behind. They decided to attack, and Zhanqi grabbed him from behind and started to strangle him. The others started to help him and grabbed his arms. Shengbo opened the door and said that they should carefully lock him in the infirmary. The three of them dragged him to the door and pushed him inside and locked him there. They looked at Chong inside the infirmary and asked if he was imagining it, or if it was too easy. The old man looked away and said that they were just wasting their time. That freak must have gotten to the gun. At that moment, Yiming came to them and asked who he called a freak. He was holding a gun in his hand and said that he didn't understand where that idiot Xiaoyong hid everything else. There was only this. He pointed the submachine gun at them and said that, however, this was enough for them. He would figure it out and find another gun. They should move back to the room. Zhangqi asked with a dissatisfied look, "What is he doing? After all, he saved them." Yiming said with a serious expression, "A big favor can become a big burden. He should look at how arrogant he is acting. He saved them once, but he will treat them as slaves for the rest of his life." Shengbo said that some people are ungrateful by nature, they cannot be taught. Bai called his name and asked him not to do that. Chong stared at Yiming, who continued to aim at them, and said that they should be quiet and follow the command. They should move faster. At the same time, near the Jinyu mansion, Hongli said that the terrain there is difficult. It is an ideal place to hide from mutants. He must take care of himself. He can also come to the garden when he finds his people. They are in the 8th building, but he should not try to enter through the main entrance. The protagonist agreed with a small smile and thanked him for his advice. He continued walking, and Song asked, after all, he saved them. Maybe they should help him? The captain said that they didn't know what was going on outside the mansion. The zombie horde would definitely kill them. He asked, then, didn't he just go to his death? Hongli said that they had warned him, although it was a shame to lose a man with such good skills. Inside the mansion, someone sighed with displeasure and said that the power was out and they had no phone signal either. Young Tao said with a displeased look that he couldn't check if Shenjie had completed his task. The other man said with a displeased look that he could forget about it. He didn't care anymore. He had been holding back for too long. He would let off steam tonight, otherwise he wouldn't be able to sleep. The other bandits agreed and said that he had gone alone and was definitely dead. They would just have to tie up his wife so that she couldn't kill herself. Who knew when they would get to them too? It was better to enjoy it so as not to regret anything. Lee stood by the window, gave them permission to do it, and said that they had to be careful. They couldn't kill her. They were happy about it and immediately went to her, and he paid attention to what was happening on the street. He asked why all the zombies outside were dead. He went out to the landing and asked who it was, the saviors. He was very surprised because he noticed something, but did not have time to do anything, and his head was cut off with one blow. Xiao Li looked at the bandits, who entered the room with a worried look, and asked them to leave. One of the bandits started to take off his pants and said with a big smile that she shouldn't pretend that she didn't understand why they came. He grabbed her son and she asked loudly with a worried look, "What are they doing?" They should let him go. The bandit slapped her in the face with his palm, threw the child aside, and said that they only wanted her. Shuai Shuai started to cry and said loudly that he would protect her at any cost. He couldn't do anything because he was thrown out into the hallway and the door was closed. He turned around and said loudly that they should let her go. His dad doesn't mind them after all. At that moment, the body of the dead Li fell next to him, which scared him a lot. MC entered the room and asked with a serious expression, his dad, "Is this Shengjie?" In the next room, Yang Tao hit Xiao Li in the face and said loudly that she should scream louder. Or is she afraid that her son will hear? She should stop ruining their fun. She didn't make a sound. The thug walked up to her and said that he would be the first. Suddenly, the door to the room suddenly opened. They paid attention to this and asked if her son really wasn't such a weakling. He was about to say something else, but a very quick punch to the throat stopped him. Yang Tao turned to him and said that he should throw him out of here. Suddenly, the guy's body fell to the floor separately from his head, which surprised them very much. He was about to say something, but Xiaoyang walked up to him very quickly, grabbed his head and threw him aside. The thug, looking worried, was about to ask something, but instead of answering, he received a kick to the face. At the same time, Yiming continued to aim his gun at his comrades and said that this was his last call. They had to move or he would shoot. Shengbo looked at the others and said that they had to listen to him. They had to go to the room. He had a gun. They just had to comply with his demands, and he would think of something. Yiming laughed at this and asked, "Is he serious about this? It seems like he will have to make a few corpses to establish his power." He pointed the gun at him with a big smile and said that he would die first. Shanshan was very worried about her grandfather, and Zhangqi asked him to stop. Yiming heard a sound from the infirmary and looked to the side and asked, "What was that?" Suddenly, the door to the infirmary started to open, which made him worried. Chong opened the door, and it attracted the attention of everyone nearby. They looked at it and asked, did he really open the door himself? It was impossible. He was mad and couldn't use the key. Chong looked at Yiming with a very serious expression, and drool was flowing from his mouth. Because of this, he pointed his gun at him and asked, "Did the zombie open the door? It seems that he can't be let out alive." He pulled the trigger, but nothing happened, and he asked, "Did the gun jam?" Chong took advantage of the moment and immediately attacked him, which made him start screaming loudly in pain. Unexpectedly for the others, he stood up, grabbed Yiming by the hem of his clothes and dragged him to the infirmary. The others looked at this in surprise and asked, "What just happened?" He was surprisingly calm. The zombie stopped at the door and took out the key from the lock of the door to the infirmary. He threw the key to the others and locked himself in the infirmary together with the traitor. Everyone else looked at the door with shocked faces and said nothing. At the same time, the protagonist was standing in the center of the room, and all the surviving bandits were already tied up. He called the child and said that he should come here. Xiao Li, looking worried, hugged her son and asked what he was going to do. He called him back with a calm expression. Shuai Shuai walked away from her and told his mother that everything was fine. When he came up, he handed him a knife and said that he should take it. He pointed his hand at the tied-up bandits and said that he should kill them. They both became very worried about this and asked him to spare them. She, looking worried, said that he was just a child. MC looked at him and said that it was no longer like that. He was the only man who could protect his mother. He should gather all his strength and kill the freaks who hurt her. Shuai Shuai remembered what happened earlier and, with tears in his eyes, ran towards them, swinging the knife to stab. He actually killed those two freaks and was breathing heavily because of everything that had happened to him. Xiao Li looked at her son with a worried expression and called his name. He turned around and asked, "Weren't they the ones who killed his dad?" Xiaoyang agreed with a calm expression. Because of this, he threw the knife on the floor, started crying loudly, and ran to his mother, who immediately hugged him. She looked at him and said that she asked him to at least take his son. She was ready to give anything for it. Shuai Shuai refused and said that he would not go anywhere because he needed to protect her. He said with a calm expression that they would all leave together because he promised Shengje that they would be safe. After that, they prepared themselves, armed themselves, and went outside. He looked at the bodies around the building with a surprised expression and asked, "Are you strong enough to kill so many zombies?" The protagonist looked around the street with a serious expression and said that he did it. He noticed something ahead, raised his hand and said that they should stop. He turned around and asked if she knew the way to the 8th building of Rongshan Garden. Xiao Li said that he was looking in the right direction right now. At the same time, at the 8th building, several armed bandits stood outside and loudly said that they didn't have to worry, they would fairly distribute their supplies. Women under 40 would go with them. The people inside armed themselves with various weapons, and one of them asked what they would do. Surrender? Hong Li turned around, refused, and said with a worried look that these freaks don't keep their promises. Apart from Yu Eran and Hao Fang, no one would survive. One of the bandits loudly said that he was giving them 10 minutes. Refusal to cooperate would result in everyone's death. The girls were worried about what was happening and asked if the two of them should go out and beg for mercy. She didn't want that and wasn't going to become their plaything. The captain gestured for them to be quiet and said they didn't have to worry. That wouldn't happen. They had to guard the passage. They wouldn't get around from the other side. The bandits standing outside said they had good weapons, but their leader had a gun. If these cowards didn't come out, they wouldn't be able to storm them. They didn't need that. They had to shut off the water on the lower floors and see how long they could last. MC was watching from around the corner of the building, and Shuai Shuai asked, "Were these people bad too?" He came out of hiding, took aim, agreed, and said they were just like the ones who had bullied him and his mother. Hongli went further and said they had to stay on the stairs and not give away their position. He would check what they were doing downstairs. He walked to the window, carefully looked out, and said 7 of them were fully equipped, and 3 more had firearms. He heard a loud call and hid behind a cover and asked what that was. Everyone else was surprised too, and one of the bandits was shot in the head. They immediately started hiding behind a cover and asked loudly who was there. The captain looked to the side and saw Xiaoyong walking towards the building with a machine gun in his hands and immediately remembered him. A shootout started between them in which the bandits were losing and could not hit the only person who was walking towards them across an open field with no cover. He chuckled because of this and called them amateurs. One of the bandits started to worry about this and asked where this psycho came from anyway. The protagonist fired several shots at the cover he was hiding behind. He got scared because of this and asked loudly, "What are they doing?" They should shoot at him while he is aiming at him. The other bandit immediately crawled out of cover and screamed loudly before shooting. He immediately noticed this, turned around and fired 2 shots, one of which hit him in the head. The leader of the bandits chuckled and asked this idiot, "Is he out of ammo?" He crawled out from behind cover and saw MC, who was standing very close to him. The bandit fired a shot, but he leaned to the side and the shot did not hit him. He very quickly redirected the gun to his head with his own hands and helped pull the trigger. After that, he decided to check the pockets of this bandit. When he was done with this, he went into the building, where he was attacked by several surviving bandits with cold weapons. He killed the attackers with a few shots and said that they can go out. They met with other survivors and Shuai Shuai, with a surprised look, said that he was so cool. The system notified that he received a new task, reinforcements. The condition is to recruit 5 survivors from the Zhongshan Garden. The reward is 25 points. Xiaoyong looked at the corpses of the people and asked, "Who are these people?" Hongli looked at them and said that they were the freaks from the Bikushan villas. They are in the south of the city. He called the 2 survivors and said that since they had escaped from the south, they needed to explain to him. They approached him and said that they were a well-armed and smart gang. They had holed up in the Bikushan villa and gathered almost all the survivors from the south. The protagonist closed his eyes and thought that in his past life, there was a settlement in the south from which Shuxiong and Kuijing came. Could it really be them? He asked if this was the only settlement in the south. They said that this was not entirely true. There used to be others, smaller ones, but they had little chance against an armed gang. They were captured. They were animals. They killed half indiscriminately. They only took beautiful women, children, and those who wanted to join. He said that it was definitely them then. The 3 of them had firearms. They should search them. Maybe they could find spare magazines or something useful. He handed over his machine gun and said that he could take this too. He would have 5 magazines. The Bikushan gang won't ignore this. They can fight off a dozen people with this. They need to hold out for a few days. He will go back home, prepare and deal with them. They were surprised by this and said that it was impossible. They can't be defeated. They have dozens of people or even more. That's right, the risk is not worth it. They'd better find another place. If they move a few kilometers, they won't search the entire city. MC said that they don't have to worry because he has a personal score to settle with them. In a few days, he will return with a big car and take them to the east. Not far from the old tea plantation is his fortress, where people are needed. He began to leave with Xiaoli and Shuai Shuai and said that they should take care of themselves. At the same time, in the Bikushang area, zombie bodies were hung at the entrance to the building. There were several people sitting inside, and a guy with glasses named Zhang Qingwen asked, "Did they still not sort out the supplies from Jinyu Mansion?" Shuxiang called him with a small smile and said that the people had already been sent out and would be back soon. Lin Guangkai said with a smile that all sorts of rich people lived there. They could find expensive ones. Maybe there would even be something interesting there. It's better not to only think about the supplies, right? He smiled because of this and said that they were on the same wavelength. He asked them to bring all the survivors. Qingwen called him with a serious expression and said that he still hadn't completed any of his tasks. Shuxiang said that he didn't have to worry. He would do everything right, he promised. After that, he went out into the courtyard and the guy who was standing there asked, "How did it go?" He asked with a dissatisfied expression, "Did the guys come back yet?" He said with a confused look that an hour ago he sent someone to scout. He had bad news. He was very surprised by the story he heard and asked loudly, "Were they all killed?" There were ordinary citizens in Rongshan Garden. Why did they die even with 3 guns? He must tell Taozi to gather everyone who can hold a gun. He can't lose this time. At the same time, Shanshan heard the sound of an approaching car, turned around and said that it was definitely Xiaoyong. They all ran out to meet him, and the system announced that the task responsibility for wife and son was completed. 25 system points were obtained. The total number of points is 36. She ran up to him and said that he was finally back. He looked at those who came out and said that it turned out that it was Yiming. She was surprised by what he said and asked, "So he knew about this from the beginning?" He called Zhang Qi, pointed at the newcomers and said that he should take them to the room, then they would gather near the infirmary. After that, they came to the corridor and Shengbo asked with a surprised look, did he know from the beginning that he was planning something like this? The protagonist picked up the submachine gun from the floor and said that, to be honest, he was not sure if it was him. However, he knew one thing for sure. There was a traitor among Zhang Qi's friends. He handed him the gun, after which he looked at the magazine and asked, "Are these rubber bullets?" The old man looked towards the infirmary and was about to ask something about it. MC went to the door and asked, his name was Chong, right? He is a pretty rare mutant. He remembered what happened earlier, when he entered the maze and said that if he understood what he was saying, he should slowly blink 3 times. After receiving an answer from him, he said that he should answer with blinking. What is 2 times 3? At present, he said that those infected with the alien virus have a slim chance of becoming a rare mutant. They usually have higher intelligence and potential than ordinary zombies. Some can retain fragments of memories. He was lucky to become a rare mutant among the rare mutants. He opened the door to the infirmary and Chong, who was kicking Yiming in the head, immediately turned to face them. However, instead of attacking them, he smiled and waved his hand at them. Xiaoyong looked at him and said that he should stop this and kill him already. He obeyed him and immediately carried Yiming by his clothes. Zhang Qi called out to him with a worried look and asked, "He remembers him, right?" Chong turned to face him, nodded his head and began to growl. He tried to hit him with his hand, but he dodged and said loudly that it looks like he remembers everything, even as a zombie. He still can't keep his hands to himself. After that, the protagonist lay down in his room and the system notified him that the hidden achievement mutant companion had been received. 10 system points were received, a total of 46 points. He was pleased with this and said that it was a rather pleasant surprise. He wanted to check the store, and the system notified him that the first level life-saving supply box was worth 5 points. The first level armed resistance supply box was worth 5 points. The second level dark technology supply box was worth 50 points. He was very surprised by what he saw and said loudly that this was the first time he saw a second level box. He calmed down and said that 50 points were too expensive. He should open 2 other boxes so that they wouldn't take up space. He clicked on the system window and bought these 2 boxes. The system notified him that he had received an alien infection blocker. There is a chance to block the effect of the alien infection, cannot reverse the completed mutation. Received a Barrett M82, a 1.5 BMG special purpose rifle, 10 rounds of 50 caliber. He was surprised by this and asked, is the weapon in the first level box so powerful? What will happen at level 2 or 3 then? Maybe a tank. Thanks to the blocker, can he heal a person if he has not fully transformed? He looked at his task and said that he can't wait for the second level box. Tomorrow he will need to complete the task. At the same time, Chong reached the wall and threw Yiming outside. The next day, they went outside and MC said that from now on, they will all have at least an hour of shooting practice every day. After that, the 5 of them started shooting their guns at cans and bottles. He approached Shengbo and said that he should ask Zhang Qi and the others to prepare several rooms. Today, he will bring a group of survivors here. He agreed and said that he does not need to worry about them. He turned around and called Chong, who put on a respirator and said that he would go with him. After that, the 2 of them left the base and found a bus on the road. He looked inside and saw a zombie sitting in the driver's seat. Chong went inside and threw him out of the driver's seat. Xiaoyong went inside with him and handed him the key to take it. When he took the key, he went to the driver's seat and said that he cannot worry and take off the respirator when only he is around. However, in the Rongshan Garden, he needs to put it on again so as not to scare the others. At the same time, a crowd of bandits climbed into the back of the car and asked why they were not there yet. Shupshang was smoking a cigarette next to the car and said that he could not believe that so many people needed to be taken to the Rongshan Garden. He threw the cigarette and they all went together. At the same time, the main character was riding a bus along a road where there were many abandoned cars. The survivors, led by Captain Hongli, were sitting in a room eating crackers. Zixuan heard the sound of a car and said that it was probably him coming back for them. The captain took his machine gun and said that they should be quiet because they had to check first. He looked out the window, but the sound of the car was from bandits who had stopped near their house and were preparing to attack. Xu Xiong got out of the car with a gun in his hand and said that they should move out. Hong Li said with a dissatisfied look that it was not him, but those bandits again. Song took out a gun and said that it seemed that those idiots did not understand anything the first time. The guy next to him said that they should fight back because they also had guns. The captain turned to them and said that they should not be impudent because this time there were more of them and everyone was armed. They should stick to the ambush plan. He would go to the roof. Xu Xiong and the other bandits approached the building, and he said that this was a good distance. The freaks would be within range if they approached a little further. They all pointed their guns at the building together. Song noticed this and said with a surprised expression that they should all be careful and take cover. They started firing their guns at the windows at the same time. He was very surprised by this and covered his head with his hand. Xu Xiong turned around with a serious expression and said that he should give him a loudspeaker. If they saw anyone sticking their heads out, they should open fire. He was just about to say something when suddenly one of them was shot in the head. Immediately after that, another bandit was hit in the leg and began to scream loudly in pain. They became worried about this and said loudly that they should run for cover. He has a rifle or a machine gun. Xu Xiong hid around the corner and said loudly that the intelligence said there was a pistol. With the lost ones, there should be 4 pistols. Where did they manage to get a machine gun? One of the bandits called him out in a scared voice and asked what they were going to do. He asked what other options they had besides retreating. He noticed that the bandit was starting to run away and loudly told the idiot that they should have waited for the signal and run together. Hong Li immediately noticed him and hit him with several shots, killing the guy. Xu Xiong was unhappy about this and loudly said that they were retreating on his signal. He started the countdown, and when he finished, they all started retreating back to the car. He watched with a smirk as his comrades ran away without any problems. Suddenly, the captain started firing his machine gun again and killed several of them. When the shooting stopped, he started running and said that he must have run out of bullets. Hong Li continued to watch them and reloaded his machine gun. Xu Xiong ran to the car, got into the front seat, and ordered them to leave. One of the bandits did not have time to get into the car and asked them to wait for him. His comrades did not stop, and he was immediately shot. At the same time, Xiaoyang entered the city on his bus. At the crossroads, he noticed the bandits leaving and asked who they were. He decided not to pay attention to it and said that the task and points were more important now. He drove to the right building, saw the corpse of a bandit on the road, and said that it looked like they still needed the machine gun. That car could have belonged to the escaping bandits. Chong began to growl, which attracted his attention, and he asked if he was hungry. He smiled, allowed him to eat, and said that it was better not to leave food for other zombies. Because of this, the mutant immediately went to eat, and he said that he would have to find him near the 8th house when he finished. Chong began to eat, which is why he felt something strange and his eyes filled with blood. The protagonist went to the building, looked at the bodies of the dead bandits, and said that these bandits do not take victims into account at all. Zixuan looked out the window, saw him, and loudly warned the others about it. After that, they all left the building together, and he asked if they managed to fight off the attack. Hong Li pointed his finger behind him, agreed, and said that they did it thanks to his rifle. He just served as a marksman. They all heard a loud roar, which attracted their attention, and they all saw Chong, who was walking towards them. They were worried about this. He immediately aimed his machine gun and said that they should be careful. These are zombies. MC began to move the barrel of his rifle down with his hand and said that they can calm down because he came with him. This surprised all the survivors, and he pointed to the corpse of a man nearby and said that there are more people there. He can eat them. The captain asked what is going on here. Can he talk to them? He turned to them and said that this was a special case. Everything was quite complicated. He should get on the bus. He would explain everything during the trip. He turned to Chong, who was eating, and said that he should finish quickly and then go to the bus. He continued to eat and made a gesture of agreement. When he finished eating, he put on a respirator and came to the bus. Everyone noticed him, and a surprised Zixuan asked, did he put on a muzzle himself? Xiaoyang looked at him and said that he shouldn't say that in front of him, otherwise he might hit him. He admired what was happening and continued to look at him. Chong began to get on the bus, and Hong Li asked with a little surprise, was it his imagination, or did the bus tilt? He walked up to the protagonist, handed him the key, and said the word key several times. He was surprised by this and asked, can he talk? He said the word again and he thought, did he start evolving when he ate 6 corpses? Need to go back quickly and invest points to remain the strongest in the fortress. After that, he went back to the shelter and thought that now it was hard for him to believe that it was a zombie. At the same time, Guangkai pointed his finger at Shuxiong, who had returned, and asked in a loud, dissatisfied voice, what did he tell him? This idiot can't complete a single task. He said loudly with a very worried look that it was not his fault they had a machine gun. Qingwen looked at him with a serious expression and asked, where did a simple policeman get a rifle? Does he think he is an idiot? He said that he was telling the truth. They can send someone to check. Guangkai got angry because of this and kicked him very hard in the head. Shuxiong left, and he said with a dissatisfied look that this idiot has been annoying him for a long time. Since he brought such big losses, then him too. Dongshu, who was standing next to him, immediately understood him and said that he could just say that he wanted to take his woman. He said with a smile that he shouldn't say anything stupid. They could share her as a common thing. Qingwen said with a sly grin that they shouldn't rush. He would first find a suitable chance. Shuxiong stood at the door of the study with a serious expression and heard everything they were talking about. After that, he returned home and started throwing things on the floor out of anger. Kuijing saw this and asked him what was wrong. She walked up to him and told him that he should calm down. He said with a serious expression that she should quickly pack her things. They were leaving immediately. This place would no longer be safe. They needed to think ahead. He called Qingzi, who immediately came to him and asked if he needed anything. Shuxiong said that he should gather the remaining people. At the same time, MC took the bus to the shelter. Zixuan came out, was very surprised by what he saw, and said loudly that this was a real Doomsday fortress. The system notified that the survivor recruitment quest had been completed. The goal had been exceeded. 8 of the 5 people needed had been saved. The reward was 25 points, and the bonus reward was 5 points. The total was 66 points. He looked at this notification and was happy that he had received a bonus reward for this quest. He got off the bus, called Chong, and said that he would go with him to the southern district tomorrow night. Hongli heard this and asked why he wanted to go there. Xiaoyong said with a smile that there was one unresolved contradiction. He needed to visit the people from the Bikushan villas. After that, he sat in his room, looked at the system window with the store, and said that this was the first box of the second level. He spent 50 points on this, and the system notified that he had 16 points left. He said with a serious expression that he hoped it would not disappoint him. He opened the box and the system announced that he had received a physical enhancement potion, plus 20. He was surprised by what he received and said loudly that the second level box was impressive. He used this injection and said that he had 33 points of physical strength, which was 6 times that of ordinary people. A mosquito flew past him, but he waved his hand very quickly and caught the insect with 2 fingers. He looked at it and immediately let it go. After a while, the protagonist walked outside where the others were practicing shooting their guns. Hongli called him and asked if he was going to go to the city. He agreed and asked if he needed anything. The captain asked for instructions, and he said that he seemed to have the best shooting skills among them. Could he teach the others? He said with a wide smile that he was good at this. He didn't have to worry. After that, he walked to the bus with Chong. After that, the 2 of them left the shelter. After a while, when it was night, Shuxiong went outside and asked what happened to Qingzi. His gang member said that he could relax. He should wait for them at the place. Suddenly, the rest of the gang members stood in their way, and the car turned on the headlights. They were surprised by this, and one of them asked what was going on here. Dongshu held a gun in his hand and asked where they were going. Shuxiong was very unhappy about this, but he decided to keep it under wraps, and said that they were planning to take advantage of the darkness to deal with Rongshan Garden. He chuckled at this, and one of the bandits threw the dead bandit's body at his feet, and one of them loudly called him Qingzi. Shuxiong punched him hard in the face and loudly said that he should look more closely. He turned around and said with a worried look that it was the first time he saw this man. Dongshu loudly gave the order to start, and they all pointed their guns at them together. Immediately after that, they all started shooting together, but killed everyone except Shuxiong. He was very worried about this, and said that he really didn't know anything. What are they doing? He chuckled at his stubbornness, and pointed to the car behind him, and said that he should see who was sitting inside. The headlights immediately went out, and he was very surprised when he saw Kuijing inside. Guangkai said with a smile that he did not have to make excuses. She told him about his betrayal. Shuxiong was very angry because of this and asked loudly, how could she leave him? He did not pay attention to him, turned around and asked, what are they going to do? Qingwen with a calm expression on his face ran his finger to his throat. Immediately after that, a strong man hanged Xuxiong with a rope that was wrapped around his neck. At the same time, MC came to the mansion with Chong and walked quietly next to the fence. He saw this pathetic freak hanging and said that he deserved it. But he was offended that he was not the one who dealt with him. He picked up a sharp small stone, threw it, and cut the rope. He lifted his head and said with a smile that he would help him avenge this worthless end. At the same time, tied to the bed half naked, Kuijing said that she helped them after all. Why are they treating her like this? She asks them to let her go. Qingwen leaned towards her with a smile and asked loudly, "Doesn't she like the reward?" Guangkai started to get dressed, but noticed a sound and asked what it was. He walked to the window and looked out onto the street. Lin Guangkai looked out the window in confusion and saw many corpses lying on the ground. The next second, there was a loud knock on the door behind him. Turning around, he shouted, "What's going on?" At this moment, the protagonist climbed onto the window and, holding a knife in his hand, put it to Guangkai's throat, and the next second, he slit his throat. Qingwen turned around and shouted, "Idiot! Who is he?" Kuijing raised her head and shouted in surprise, "Xiaoyang?" Then the protagonist rushed forward, hitting Qingwen's throat, and he fell lifelessly to the floor, rolling off the mattress. Kuijing screamed in fear, "What does he want?" MC smirked, "Were they having fun here?" He walked up to the door handle and turned around, saying that he wanted to see how Xuxiong would react to her like this. Tears streamed down her face, and she asked in surprise, "Xuxiong?" The protagonist then opened the door, and the transformed Xuxiong ran at Kuijing, then bit her in the neck. She desperately screamed that she was wrong. He had to forgive her, and MC left the room, closing the door behind him. After a while, he went outside and, pointing to the corpses, told Chong that he could eat this. He said, "Eat at least one." The protagonist then looked away in surprise and listened. Meanwhile, Jack walked up the stairs, holding a knife in his hands. Tim approached him, holding Lily's hand, and said, "Her thin skin and tender meat." The girl had tears streaming down her face and was screaming in fear, and Jack replied, "No, she's too skinny." He then pointed at Zai Zai and said, "That one." The boy's mother shook her head desperately, and then the cook grabbed him and added, "The fat one." His mother screamed excitedly, "He has to let him go." Then Jack turned around and waved her off and hit her, screaming that she has to get out. Zai Zai screamed desperately, "Mom!" She, lying on the floor, screamed, "No, he has to spare her son. She's begging him." She reached out to the other hostages and screamed, "They have to save him, please." Then everyone present looked in surprise at the door, through the holes of which light was shining. Tim screamed, "Who's there?" Jack noticed that it looked like a shotgun. Did anyone have one left? His colleague screamed, "It's not. Only the boss does." At that moment, Zai Zai ran into his mother's arms, and she, hugging her son, asked, "Is he okay?" The next second, the door opened, and Jack told Tim to go and check. He was surprised. "He?" Jack added quickly. He, holding the gun in front of him, walked forward to the door. But from the corridor, Chong's hand went to his neck and dragged him into the corridor. The others shouted in fear, "Zombies! We must shoot there." Then they began to shoot at the door and shouted, "Over there! Watch out!" The next second, Chong flew into the room from the boarded-up window and, shouting loudly, jumped on Jack. He grabbed him by the head and, turning in the air, broke his neck. Then he ran forward, and screams were heard in the building, coming at him, "Help!" After some time, Chong stood near the corpses. The worried girl asked, "He will not kill them." "What kind of zombies are these?" At that moment, the protagonist entered the room and said that he was great. "Brother Chong, the mask does not interfere with movement." He raised his hand and replied that he was cooler this way. Zai Zai's mother asked in surprise, "A zombie talking?" The protagonist, looking at the frightened Lily, who clung to her mother, said that they should not be afraid, everything is fine, he will not attack. She excitedly said that it was a super monster, it would kill in a second. MC was surprised. He sat down next to her and asked, had she seen one like this before? Rosie confirmed this, and he asked where they met it. She answered, the jewelry market, which is in the east. He was surprised so quickly, he thought it would take a month or two, and not far from the old tea town. Chong asked with interest, what? The protagonist answered, another rare mutant. Their level of rationality as well as hunting efficiency differ from ordinary zombies, but the mutation is often unstable, so they become strange and dangerous. He said that in that case it was him. But before he could finish speaking, MC put his hand on his shoulder and said that he shouldn't worry, he wouldn't let him go crazy. Then he asked, were these all the survivors from the villas? The guy answered that there were a lot of people locked in the sales office. The girl added that there could be survivors in the basement too? After some time, the protagonist and all the other survivors went down to the basement. He opened the door and said in surprise, they caught and killed survivors every day. Because of this, there were no other camps left in the south of the city. But to kill so many people, how were they going to eat them? Shaggy explained that they regularly took out meat. They don't know how many there were. The protagonist, looking at the corpses, thought that he had an approximate idea of the number, but they would not have eaten that much. Maybe they fed the zombies? Then he turned to him and told him to tell about the sales office. Shaggy explained that it was near the southern gate, about a kilometer from here. Initially, people were taken there. Here they were only gathered for slaughter. The protagonist was surprised to see a system window in front of him, which said, "A series of tasks has begun, a poor utopia. The goal is to expand the community. Conditions: you need to maximize the number of people in your community. Current score, 2. Reward, 20 points. Current points, 36. Sometime later, in the sales office, the man asked his friend if he heard shots from the northern gate. In response, he grinned. They use people as targets there. At that moment, Chong jumped down from a height in front of them, and they screamed in fear, "Zombies!" Meanwhile, in the building itself, naked girls turned around in surprise at the noise. One of them asked, "What is that noise?" Another survivor, lying on the floor, grabbed her head and screamed, "Damn, they can give them anything. They just must have let them in." The next second, the door to their room opened, and she screamed, "They mustn't go in," but the MC entered the room and told the girls to get out. After that, they all headed for the exit, and one of the girls asked, "Will he take them to a safe place?" He confirmed this and added that they all have to work. The survivors happily shouted, "No problem, ready right now." Then he waved his hand and said that in that case, they shouldn't waste time, it's time to leave. And then they got on the bus, and after a while, they arrived at the right place. Shanshan, standing on the tower, noticed that Xiaoyang's brother was back. She would open it. Jiangqi told her to wait. He didn't try to go inside. First, they would see what he was up to. Meanwhile, the protagonist explained that this was their fortress, but he couldn't let them in. Shaggy said they didn't understand. The world was dangerous. Rosie asked, then where should they live? He said there were temporary houses behind the net near the fortress. Not as safe, but the conditions were better than other places. He put his hand on his hip and added, there were a lot of unfinished buildings and vacant lots. In time, they would rebuild everything, and life would become easier. The survivors bowed gratefully and shouted, and that was it, their savior. After a while, the truck drove up to the gate. Jinrui, sitting inside, asked with displeasure, why was no one answering? Where did that idiot Zhang Qingwen go? Then she frowned and noticed that something was wrong. Then she opened the door and saw a zombie. Shuxiong turned to her and, opening his mouth, quickly ran forward, but she hit him with her fist and then walked forward. After a while, she rubbed her knife from the blood, and Rafiki said, "Sister, he's a corpse. Where will they get meat?" She replied that there was no choice. They would search for it themselves, but before that, they needed to deal with those who were in their way. She would kill them. Then they went outside and saw several more corpses. Rafiki noticed, Sister Rui, there were no survivors left here. She asked, what happened to the meat? He replied that it was in place. She ordered to drive up the truck and load it. After a while, her subordinates got busy, and then she looked in surprise at the tire tracks in front of her, and Rafiki asked, did she find something? She sat down and replied that she would like to see who could have pulled this off. Meanwhile, MC was sitting on the tower and rereading the goal and conditions of the task. He asked, community score? And how to increase it? He thinks that numbers are the most important indicator. The land here is decent, thanks to that snob. Then he said, by the way, a rare mutant. After some time he came down, and the survivors, seeing him, joyfully shouted, Savior, he has come. Zai Zai's mother threw herself at his feet, and he put his hands in front of him and told them not to thank him. Then he turned to Rosie and told her to clarify where they saw that super monster. She answered, in the Huaran store, in the jewelry market, their group was going to get supplies. She ran into it. Several people were killed. Everyone fled in chaos. And she and her daughter ran away and came across a group from the villas. They thought they were saved, but they turned out to be a crowd of animals. The protagonist repeated, Huaran. At that moment, Shanshan came up to him, and holding out her hand forward, said, they have enough supplies, there is no point in provoking that monster. Jiangqi added that they couldn't just sit and use up the supplies until they ran out. It was better to take more while they could. The protagonist turned around and said, just 2 kilometers away from them. That monster would be a security threat. Rosie dropped the basin from her hands and shouted anxiously, Savior, he mustn't go there. It kills without looking back. He replied that she didn't have to worry, they knew what they were doing. He then told Jiangqi to call Chong, they would meet that guy. After a while, the group of survivors approached the store. He said, there was a big supermarket here. Ding objected. He was too happy too soon, they could have been robbed. Wanwan suggested acting without pessimism. They had been to many stores where there were still products. Ju added, that's right. He thinks there are a lot of people around who have the courage to wander around in the apocalypse. He laughed, and then the group went inside. They entered a dark room and noticed that a lot of things had been taken, but not very thoroughly. The next second, Wanwan slammed her ladle against the wall and shouted, "Is anyone here?" She frowned and looked ahead, and then several zombies ran out from around the corner, and she shouted, "Zombies are attacking! Watch out!" There were sounds of impacts, and a few moments later she stood next to the zombie bodies and grinned, simple as pie. Dean noticed that there were few zombies. It seemed like the entire horde had been led away by those who had been here before them. The survivor behind him remarked with a smile, "Good day." He then told them not to relax, they would go deeper. At that moment, Cyborg looked at them from the corridor and said, "Loot." Fresh loot. Meanwhile, the survivors walked to the shelves and happily said, "Jackpot, they must quickly take everything, this will last for several years." Wanwan pointed her finger forward and shouted for them to look, a bed. And then she ran there and, jumping from above, shouted, "Who cares? She's staying here." The others started chatting happily. Maybe they should settle here? Great idea. Then Ju said he needed a smoke break. Ding smiled and invited him to go. After a while, they went out onto the balcony, and while Ju was lighting a cigarette, Ding asked what he thought. Should they stay here? He blew out a cloud of smoke and replied, "A large shopping mall, many entrances and exits, hard to defend. So many supplies will attract others, but there was a 2-story building nearby, which was not bad." But before he could finish speaking, Ding's face distorted with horror. A zombie pierced his comrade's body and said, "Tender meat, it will be delicious." Ding turned around abruptly and ran to the exit, calling for help. "There's a ghost here." The other survivors turned to him in surprise and asked, "What?" But the next second his body was also pierced by several sharp claws, and the zombie finished him off. Wanwan asked in fear, "What is this?" The others began to scream, "We need to leave. They will not escape." Wanwan ran forward quickly, while Cyborg jumped on the crowd of running people and shouted that he will not let anyone go. Then the zombie hit the girl's body. Wanwan ran even faster and shouted that she does not want to die. At this time, the survivors behind her were attacked by the zombie, and she running further forward and shouted, "The exit! Almost there!" But suddenly she tripped and fell to the ground. Then she turned around in fear and screamed loudly, "She does not want to die." Then she looked at Chong walking forward in surprise, and MC told her not to be afraid. Looking at him, she said in surprise, "Is this the guy who bought the land?" He extended his hand to her and said, "A real estate saleswoman." Her name was Ning Wanwan. She put her hands to her head and screamed loudly, "Ghost! Monster! There's a monster in the mall. They have to run." He replied that it was okay and they would deal with the monster. Then she turned around and her eyes widened in surprise. Cyborg pointed his hand at Chong and laughed and asked, "Did he want to take it all for himself?" The protagonist shouted, "Chong, can he handle it himself?" He replied that he would try, and then he threw Cyborg far forward. The monster stopped, skidding on the ground, and, sticking out his tongue, shouted that it was the first time he saw someone like him. How funny. Then he pushed off the ground and ran forward, hitting right in front of him. Chong managed to jump aside and his opponent laughed and asked, "I wonder if his evolution would speed up if he ate him?" Chong's fist flew into his face and he hit his head. Scratching his head, he laughed and shouted, "Freak, and he is strong." Then he swung and kicked Cyborg. After that, Chong looked up and found Cyborg crawling on the ceiling. Looking down and laughing, Cyborg said, "Finally, he will need the strength he has been saving." He then jumped on Chong. They continued to fight, moving from side to side. Zhang Qi at this moment, turning to Xiao Yong, shouted that he was losing. "Why is that monster so strong?" He replied that they did not come for nothing. He would have become unstoppable if they had waited a little longer. Then a gun appeared in his hands, and Wanwan shouted in surprise, "What the hell?" A machine gun appeared out of thin air. The protagonist took aim and said, "Brother Chong, he will not tease him anymore if he holds it for a second." Chong grabbed the opponent, and Cyborg told him to let him go. After that, the protagonist fired a shot, hitting the monster right in the head, which made him step back. He straightened up and laughing, shouted, "It hurts! Idiot! He wounded him. He will kill him, tear him to pieces." Zhang Qi, perplexed, shouted, "A shot to the head did not kill." After that, MC fired a few more bullets at the zombie. After some time, they stood near the body of Cyborg, and Zhang Qi asked, "Was he dead?" The protagonist, turning to Chong, asked, "Does he want to eat it? He can make him stronger." The zombie thought about it, and MC looked at the system window that appeared in front of him, which said, "Mission Utopia. Goal, expand the community. Conditions, maximize the score of your community. Progress, eliminated a dangerous creature, score +1. Current score, 3. Bonus points, 10. Current points, 46. He noticed with surprise, it counted. "Okay, you can't leave empty-handed. They will clean out this supermarket." Wanwan was surprised. "They will clean out?" After that, the protagonist raised his hand up and, like a whirlwind, began to collect the products. Zhang put his hands on his waist and, throwing his head back, said, "Wow, amazing. What kind of magic is this?" The protagonist looked at the corpses and said that they would turn into zombies if they left the bodies like this. "Chong, is he still hungry?" After a while, Rui ordered Sam to stop here. Then she asked what he would say. Rafiki looked through the binoculars and turned around and replied, "A large number of people, poorly armed. The only advantage is a strong building." Sam turned around and asked how they managed to get rid of Qingwen and Guangkai. She asked in response, "Isn't it obvious? Cautious tactics drove a horde of zombies there." She had long said that the villa was not safe as a base. Then she laughed, leaning back in her chair, and added, "It seems that God saw their suffering, so he sent loot and a new home." Rafiki said with a smirk, "Exactly." He even felt sorry for them. Sam asked, "What's the plan? Are they attacking now?" Rui looked out the window and replied that it was not so. They were going back. They will gather more people and weapons before attacking. Then the car turned around. Meanwhile, Wanwan asked in surprise, "Really?" Zhang answered, "Of course. Not only are there mattresses, but there's also hot water for showering." She happily shouted, "Hooray!" At this moment, MC noticed that someone was approaching. They should prepare their weapons. Zhang picked up a machine gun, and a car drove past them. Rui and the protagonist's eyes crossed. The next second, a system window appeared in front of him with a new task, Villain Hunter, Part 1. Condition, repel the attack. Reward, 50 points. He was surprised. Repel the attack? He remembered Rui's face and thought, is this about those people? Then they arrived at their base, and the protagonist, approaching Shanshan, asked, "Were there any strangers nearby?" She was holding a crossbow in her hands. Then, pointing her finger to the side, she answered, "A car was driving in the distance, but did not approach. She thought that they were returning." "Did something happen, Xiaoyang?" He told her to tell the old man Shengbo and Lao Li to gather everyone. He has an important announcement. Meanwhile, the southern suburbs, a coal plant. The survivor was setting up the radio and heard, "They are waiting for survivors at the coal plant in the southern suburbs, the gathering place, not enough people." Mike scratched his head and said, "It's somewhere around here." Then they noticed the car and he shouted, "Car, other survivors, great!" The next second, Rui got out of the car and asked, "Did they hear the recording and decide to join?" Mike stepped forward and said shyly, "Yes." While he was looking at her chest, she said, "Just in time after her." He replied, "Thank you very much." Rui said, "It's nearby, not everyone will fit in the car, they will walk." He replied, "Great." After a while, they walked forward and Mike, surprised, said, "Wow, so much space." Finally, they found shelter, and added that he needed to go to the toilet, he would go outside for a second. Rui turned to him and explained that there was a restroom inside, they should go. After a while, Mike was doing his business. He turned his gaze to Rui, who was looking at his pants. Then he pulled up his clothes and said, "Okay, she shouldn't be shy. He knows what she wants. And her brother is very strong." But the next second, he wheezed, and she stabbed him in the neck with a knife. Looking down, she said, "Pity." She expected a good catch, but it turned out. After a while, she went out into the hall, and Sam said that everything was ready. She replied, "Okay, he should drag them to the toilet too." Looking at the corpses of the survivors, she added that he should call the second and third. Meanwhile, the protagonist held a meeting. Hongli asked in surprise, who was targeting them? MC replied that they do not know anything about the enemies, they can attack at any time. Then he raised his finger and said, "Zhang, Chong, they will go with him. They will clear the unfinished buildings in the southeast. The survivors will temporarily take refuge there. In the current place they will become cannon fodder." Shanshan said that he should take her. Bai added, "And him." The two survivors said that they wanted to too. Shuai raised his hand and said that he would help. Xiao Li was indignant, "No way." Wanwan asked, "Then should she help too?" The protagonist replied that it should not be so dangerous there. The old man Shengbo and Lao Li will remain to guard the fortress. The rest will go with them. After some time, they set off and, entering the building, began to destroy the zombies. After some time, the protagonist asked, "Are everyone safe?" "Check." The survivors answered in the affirmative. Then he explained that there will be an attack in the coming days. They should sit out here. The survivors said that they can fight. Shaggy agreed and added that they could help. Then the protagonist scratched his chin thoughtfully and replied, "Okay. First, they should restore order here. He will give them pistols and ammunition. During the attack, they will keep in touch via radio. They must listen to his command." Shaggy clenched his fist and replied, "No problem." Meanwhile, Rui's subordinates were unloading the truck. Third came up to her and asked, "How are you? Is everything okay, boss?" Second stood next to him and said, "Meat, man, eat." She put her hands on her waist and replied, "Order." Someone took out the Bikushana villa. They will have to get food themselves. Third asked in surprise, "Who?" Second shouted irritably, "No meat, angry." She replied, "A group from the eastern suburbs. Tomorrow morning she will take second in the team, they will kill everyone." After a while, MC sat on the bed and looking at the system window said, 46 points. Better check the new boxes. The system window said, System Store, Supply Box, Power Awakening Level 2, 25 points. Supply Box, Apocalypse Cultivator Level 2, 15 points. Supply Box, Oil, Sugar, Protein Level 1, 5 points. Upgrade, 2 points. He extended his index finger forward and noticed something new. Oh, 2 boxes of Level 2. Together it was worth 20 points. He would see what was good about it. He had gotten Physical Overload Level 1. Properties. Increase personal attributes by 25%. Weakened state after the effect ends. He was surprised, 25%. And now he has 33 points of strength. The increase will raise it to 40. That's 8 times stronger than an ordinary person. He then tensed the muscles in his arm and said that he can't wait to test the new ability. Meanwhile, Rui's squad set off. Rafiki turned to Rui and asked, "What's the plan?" She folded her arms across her chest and told him to tell everyone. First, they would drive up and kill all the survivors outside. The second would start to break through the gate. They would hide behind the modified vehicles and suppress them with fire. The second shouted, "Great, he's hungry, kill!" Meanwhile, Hongli put his hand on the railing and said that this place was hidden, but the view here was much worse than from the tower. There were many blind spots near the wall. The protagonist said that he didn't have to worry, he wouldn't need the view. He was surprised. Then why was he here? The protagonist asked, hadn't he been working as a sniper for a couple of years? He scratched his head awkwardly and replied that it wasn't so. Only a few months, he had temporarily closed the position. The protagonist asked, would he hit from 100 to 200 meters? He hit himself in the chest and told him not to underestimate him. He could hit from 500 as long as there was no strong wind. MC nodded and said that was enough. At that moment, Junchi ran up to them and said that he brought what was in it. Heavy stuff. The protagonist approached the box and Hongli said in surprise, "Is this a Barrett?" "Where did he get one?" The protagonist picked up the weapon and replied that they only had 2 magazines, 10 rounds, he should save it. After that, he handed the weapon over to the captain and he replied that he understood. Then he asked, "Are the rest ready?" Junchi replied, "Ready." He said, "Okay, he should tell everyone to be on guard. The enemy will appear at any minute." Shanshan put her hand to the device in her ear and reported that she saw something strange. Over. Hongli, looking through the sight of the weapon, confirmed that he saw it too, an enemy attack. They should get ready. Meanwhile, Rafiki looked through the binoculars again and noticed, strangely, there was no one left outside. "Have they already been put to meat?" Sam asked. "Will they stop and watch?" Rui put her hand on his headrest and replied, "They will go forward. They are too close. It will be harder to attack next time if they notice." He replied that he understood and then pressed the gas pedal, and on the radio they transmitted, "Go. We must hide under the wall." Shanshan shouted, "In firing range." "They must shoot." The next second, the survivors opened fire, aiming at the approaching cars. They hit one of the drivers, and the car went to the side, crashing into a tree. Rui was transmitted on the radio that they were noticed. She shouted indignantly, "What? Impossible!" The others asked, "What now?" She replied, "Go, they will hide under the wall." The cars zigzagged towards the wall. After that, second, armed with a circular saw, walked forward and shouted, "Kill!" He began to chop down the gate in front of him. Shanshan shouted in alarm, "Damn! They are breaking down the gate. We must shoot." Then they opened fire again. Rui and her team hid behind the car, returning fire, and she shouted, "Suppressing fire! We need to cover the second." Shanshan began to dodge the bullets, and Bai was hit by a bullet. Zhang Qi called out to him anxiously, and then grabbed him by the shoulders and said that they have many machine guns. The weapons are no worse than theirs. The survivor shouted that they must not be afraid, we must hold the position. They have enough bullets. Shengbo shouted, "They are breaking through the head gate." The survivor added, "They will be in trouble." The protagonist put his hand to the device in his ear and said, calmly, "Everything is according to plan." Then he came out of hiding and ran forward. Meanwhile, Sam shouted, "Half of the bullets left." Rui asked the second, "Is it all yet?" He answered, "Almost a little." The next second he destroyed the gate, and Shanshan shouted, "The gate has opened. They must provide supporting fire. We can't let them pass." Rui laughed evilly and said that they will see how the newbies will cope with the nightmare of evolution. Behind her, they will hide on the second. They must secure the perimeter when they enter. The second began to push the gate with his hands. The protagonist at this moment said to Hongli, on his command, "The biggest guy." He replied that he can see. He aimed straight at the second. The survivor asked in surprise, "Is this even a person?" The second was heading towards them while they were shooting at him. He let out steam from his mouth. The bullets that hit his body bounced back. Shengbo shouted in surprise, "Is he regenerating?" Rui smirked. "They are shocked, huh? This is their first time meeting an evolutionist?" Hong Li continued to hold the enemy at gunpoint, and over the radio he was told that this guy is healing. A weak weapon will not do anything. He replied that he will try. And then he fired a bullet that decapitated the second. Rui's team members shouted in surprise. What happened? How is this possible? She asked, confused. Where did they get such a caliber? At that moment, MC went around them from behind and, passing through the gate, started shooting. They shouted, the enemy is from behind. They are surrounded. Rui, turning around, shouted, damn, they miscalculated. They underestimated their strength. They ran in the opposite direction, and she shouted that they need to leave. Back to the cars. She looked at the protagonist and said, it's the guy they crossed paths with on the road. The protagonist aimed at her, but she grabbed Sam by the jacket and held it out in front of her. The bullet hit him. The protagonist said that her reaction was too fast. Was she an evolutionist too? Rui then threw Sam to the protagonist, but he managed to jump aside and shouted that she was going to run away. Hong Li, aiming again, asked, is she running away? He then fired, separating her leg from her body. She fell to the ground and he reloaded his gun and said, damn, missed. At that moment, Rafiki grabbed Rui's hand and shouted, boss. She shouted, they have to go fast. Then the car drove off in the opposite direction and Hong Li reported, she escaped. The protagonist was told on the radio if they came back for revenge. He replied, no problem. Then a system window appeared in front of him, which said, the task is a villain hunter. The first part is completed. Conditions, repel the attack. Reward, 50 points. Task, expand the community. Conditions, his community rating increases. Progress, successfully repelling the attack increases the community morale, rating +2. Current rating is 5. Reward, 20 points. Current points are 76. Then he said that he knows where they are going. A system window appeared in front of him with a new task, Villain Hunter, the second part. Conditions, attack the enemy base and exterminate the cannibals. Reward, 50 points. Meanwhile, Shanshan happily shouted, hooray, victory. MC approached the others and asked, their losses? One of the survivors answered, everyone is alive, a few are wounded. He ordered to send them to the infirmary. Quick disinfection is needed. The corpses in the refrigerator, they will leave them to Chong. After that, they have to pick up the survivors from the abandoned building while it's safe. After that, he looked at the system window and said, 76 points for the wave. He's going to go wild today. After some time, Rui arrived at the base. Her subordinates were leading her by the arm. The third came out to meet her and shouted, what the hell happened? She replied, they were too careless. She didn't know they had heavy weapons. She shouted, what are they looking at? They should bring human flesh. The third looked at her silently, and she shouted indignantly, they have to move, useless idiots. They're not worth a finger from the second. The third shouted indignantly, damned fool, can't she even keep her mouth shut in this state? She was indignant. Is he not going to obey? She ordered to grab him, but when she turned around, she didn't see any reaction. The third said, she's wounded. The second is dead. Now he's the strongest among them. The guys have already suffered enough from her. Is he right? Rui, seeing the approaching survivors, shouted, they must go away. They decided to rebel against her? They must not even think that she could not handle them. But she began to be surrounded more and more, and she shouted, they must wait. The third swung a metal pipe and laughed loudly. Her former subordinates began to beat her. After a while, Adam said, the third. He indignantly grabbed him by the clothes and shouted, what did he call him? Adam, falling on all fours and hitting his head on the ground, shouted, boss, he must forgive him. He misspoke. He waved his hand and answered, he must tell, but quickly. He raised his head and said, that woman is dead, the second too. They have lost a lot of people. The fighting power has dropped greatly if they meet that guy. The third thought, tentacle. Then he waved his hand and told him to forget it. They will just go to the guys from Seagun. Meanwhile, the protagonist's team arrived at the coal factory. John Chi, turning to the protagonist, noted that he was right. This is their base. They walked forward, and the protagonist said, be quiet. They must walk carefully and not make noise. Then they asked in surprise, is there no one? Have they abandoned the base? Maybe they were afraid that they would pursue? Hong Li pointed his hand at Rui's body and noticed that this was the woman he shot. They even kill their own. The protagonist chuckled. He was not surprised at all. John Chi said, by the way, that huge guy did not look like Chong. Hong Li added that it was true. He heard them shouting about evolutionaries. What does that mean? How to become one? Protagonist folded his arms across his chest and answered, eat people. They were surprised. Eat people? He replied that this is true. The easiest way to get the ability of a zombie is to eat people. Zhang Qi objected, but he had one too. Hong Li assumed, so if they want to survive, they need to eat others? MC put his hand in his hoodie pocket and said that they don't have to worry. It's the most obvious way, but not the only one. Then he took out the core, and they shouted in surprise, what is this? He explained that evolvers and zombies can be generalized to mutants. A mutant needs to absorb alien energy to evolve. In ordinary people, it is scattered throughout the blood and flesh. A small thing, but better than nothing. Rare mutants and evolvers have everything concentrated in the core. The longer the disaster lasts, the more chances the zombies have to collect energy in the core. Hong Li thoughtfully asked, so they have this too? If you eat zombie flesh? Zhongqi shouted in surprise. He should do it himself. He won't. The protagonist added, ordinary people will just get infected. Only mutants like Chong can become stronger from absorbing zombies. Then a system window appeared in front of him, which said, the task is a villain hunter. The second part is completed. Conditions: attack the enemy base and clear it of cannibals. Reward 50 points. Current points, 126. He thought in surprise, done? It seems that the base without people ceases to be a threat. Then Hong Li shouted at him to be careful. At this moment, a zombie jumped on the protagonists, but he managed to put a knife in front of him and throw it away. He noticed that the zombie was able to sneak up unnoticed. After that, he noticed the core in the body's chest and, taking it out, said, interesting skills. It seems the hunt was not in vain. Then he handed his comrades 2 cores. Zhongqi waved his hand and said that he will not. He must give it to Hong Li. He took the 2 cores in his hands and then shouted, okay. After that, he swallowed it and, waving his hand, said, such a pleasant feeling. MC explained that now he is only on the path to evolution. This power will not be enough to rule in the apocalypse. He should not rush. He nodded and replied that he understood. He didn't have to worry. And then they went to the car, and the protagonist said that the problem was solved. They need to go back. Meanwhile, the Sigong steel factory. Li Chen shouted, stop! Who are you? The third spread his arms out to the sides and replied that it was him, the third from the coal factory. He was surprised. The third? And then he told him to wait. After that, they went inside, and Peng, laughing, asked why he came this time. Wang Lin put her hands on her waist and asked where Jin Rui and the second were. The third thoughtfully scratched his cheek and replied that they were attacked. The sister and the second tried to protect, but did not escape. Peng sighed and turned around, ordered to take the third and the guys to a safe place. Then he said something to Lin, and she, smiling, replied that she thought so too. After a while, Adam called the boss again. The third, pointing his finger at himself, shouted indignantly, what did he call him? He apologized again and explained that he had a bad feeling. He shouted irritably, paranoid. What is he talking about? Adam turned to the wall and explained he should take a look. Steel windows and doors, more like a prison. At that moment, Li Chen entered the room and, slamming the door, told them to get out. After a while, they approached Peng again, and the third asked, what happened? Lin twirled a strand of hair between her fingers and asked what he thought they should do with the man who killed their leader. He fearfully held his hands out in front of him and asked, what are they talking about? Brother Peng, Sister Lin, is this some kind of misunderstanding? Lin asked, a misunderstanding? She chuckled and told Li Chen to explain to him before he died. Li Chen spoke. He was in the coal factory. Jinrui's bludgeoned body was lying in the yard. The second one was not there. He had disappeared. There was no sign of a fight. He pointed his finger forward. He shouted, a reasonable explanation would be betrayal. They took advantage of the injury and killed her. The third one shouted in displeasure, no, where is the evidence? This is just guesswork. Peng asked again, evidence? He laughed and asked what kind of world he lived in. Why do they need evidence? Honestly, they would have killed them long ago if not for the strength of the second and Rui. He smiled and ordered to finish them off. The guy put his hands together and asked for mercy. He has information. Lin thoughtfully asked, what kind? The guy hit his chest with his hand and shouted, a large group of people had gathered in the east of the city. They have a lot of supplies. They defeated the second and Rui. He asked not to kill him. He would take them there. Lin looked at him and asked how strong they were compared to them. The guy replied that they were about the same. Lin looked away and thoughtfully said that this was a serious threat. The guy frowned and said that they did not know how to become evolutionists. He did not see a single one of them. Li Chen thought, evolutionists? Peng asked why they lost. The guy answered fearfully that they had heavy weapons. Regular bullets would not take the second. He was killed with one shot. Lin replied that this was good information. The guy pointed his finger at himself and said, then. Lin smiled and ordered to kill them. Everyone widened their eyes in fear and then began to ask to wait and spare them. After a while, the bodies of the guys were lying on the floor in the room. Peng put his hands in his pockets and asked what they were going to do. Such a problem needs to be dealt with quickly. Lin asked, heavy weapons? Attacking is too risky. They need to become even stronger to win for sure. She ordered to send out reconnaissance. We need to make sure that they don't know about evolution. At this moment, MC was sitting on the sofa and asking, 128 points, what can I buy? The system window reported that the current number of points is 126. The system store, which costs 4 points to upgrade. Xiaoyong said, another second level box. Luck is clearly on his side. He pressed the button, after which the system window reported that the oil, sugar, protein supply box has been received. The second level dark technology supply box has been received. The points have been deducted. The current number of points is 71. From the box was received high-quality lotus root starch, 500 kilograms, good friend bars with cocoa butter, 200 kilograms, and 150 liters of edible oil. From the dark technology box was received a strength-enhancing potion that increases strength by 20 points. Suddenly there was a knock at the door and the MC said to come in. Shanshan entered the room and said, "Brother Xiaoyong." He asked what. Shanshan replied that they had caught a suspicious person. The MC stood up from the sofa and said that he would check. The guys held the man by the shoulders and he ordered to call his leader. He was not an enemy. Xiaoyong asked, was he looking for him? Asin shouted happily, the leader? The MC answered, right. He ordered to speak and Asin asked, how can he address him? The MC answered, Zhang Xiaoyong. Asin said, yeah, brother Xiaoyong. He will introduce himself. He is Shu Asin. He came from the Shigan steel factory. Song frowned and asked again, Shigan? Asin replied, yes. The MC looked at him and asked, Uncle Song, is this a familiar place? Song replied, it's a factory in the southwest, the largest in the area. It seems to have become a settlement, like the coal factory. Xiaoyong asked, is it far from them? Song replied, it's 3 kilometers further than the coal factory. MC walked up to Asin and asked why he came to such a distance. Asin asked, it's all chaos around. Shouldn't the survivors huddle together? Xiaoyong said, okay, let him continue. Asin said that their leader sent him to look for other settlements, to take the survivors to them. Bai turned around and told him not to believe it. Asin was circling around the base and drawing a map. He handed it to MC, who thoughtfully looked at the map and activated his mind's eye. He asked Shu Asin, right? He understood. He took out a gun and pointed it at Asin's head. Xiaoyong said discontentedly that they were living in the same apocalypse as them. No need to take him for a fool. He ordered to tell the truth before he shot him in the head. Asin swallowed his saliva in fear and then began to shake and say, Xiaoyong, it's true, they are just acting cautiously. There is no way to blame them. MC turned around and asked, did he see Chen Chong? Zhang Qi put his hand to his lips and said, no, he did not come out. MC waved his hand and ordered to let him go. Song frowned and asked, what, so simple? Asin asked in surprise, really? Xiaoyong handed over the card and said that he could take the card. Asin fell to his knees and bowed and thanked his brother Xiaoyong. He rushed to run away and MC smirked and thought, steel factory. He wondered how many points they will give for this. 5 months later, at the Sigan steel factory, the man said he heard that they had people missing again. Xiao Chen frowned and asked, is that monster attacking again? Suddenly, they heard a strange sound to the side and screamed in fear. What was that sound? The man told the other not to go by himself. It would be better to let the guards check it. At this moment, sharp arrows crashed into Xiao Chen's body, which pierced his body. At this time, Li Chen was standing by the wall and smoking a cigarette, when he suddenly heard a cry for help. He looked towards the running guy and asked, what? The guy replied that the monster killed Xiao Chen. Li Chen frowned and asked again, a monster? Tentacle? The guy screamed back, probably. Who else? Li Chen asked where. The guy replied that by the large garbage pit. Li Chen said irritably, horror. This time he attacked unexpectedly. He ordered everyone to hide. Evolvers with escape skills come with him. After a while, they approached the garbage pit, holding their weapons at the ready. Li Chen pushed the box aside and ordered them not to try to fight if they encountered a monster. They must run away immediately. He looked around and asked in confusion, is it gone? He crouched on the ground where he saw traces. The man asked, did the tentacle one leave? The worker wondered if it had caught its prey and left. People began to disappear more often after the coal factory and villas were destroyed. Apparently, it had attacked 3 places before, but now it was only attacking them. Li Chen realized that it was someone else. After a while, MC stood on the observation deck and looked at the road. He said that he had lasted longer than in his past life. If nothing changed, then the restoration of civilization would not be a fairy tale. The system window reported, a beggarly utopia. Goal, expand the community. Conditions, you need to maximize your community score. Current score, 38 points. Xiaoyong said, by the way, it has been several months, but the quest for the steel factory still hasn't appeared. At this moment, a cry was heard. Brother Xiaoyong. Shanshan waved her hand and screamed, they are back. MC jumped down and asked, was their hunt seen by anyone? Zhang Qi told him not to worry. They are already strong enough to notice the surveillance. Xiaoyong looked at Shuai and asked, how is Xiao Shuai doing? Is he used to it? Shuai replied, yeah, he swung his fist and said not to worry, he is doing great. Xiao Li ruffled his hair and said, that's right, he dealt with the zombies by himself today. MC smiled and said, great. He ordered them to take the mutant cores to the warehouse. The system window reported, a new task called Villain Hunter Part 3. Conditions, need to eliminate the threat, and help potential allies. Reward, 80 points. Xiaoyang read it and asked, allies? Is it about the people from the factory? After a while, Hongli asked, what, he wants to sneak in alone? It's too dangerous. Song said, yes, they have already sent out scouts. What if they have bad intentions? They won't be able to help if something goes wrong. MC told them to relax. With his current strength, even Brother Chong can't hurt him, much less them. That's why he wants to go. That way they'll know if they're friends or enemies. Old man Sheng, Li and the others, trusts them with the protection of the fortress and the town. Shengbo nodded his head and said, no need to worry, but you need to be careful. You can't do without him here. After a while, Li Chen ordered to let him through. He had urgent information. The guard waved his hand and said, he told you that you can only enter with the permission of the two leaders. Li Chen grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. The guy screamed in fear. Li Chen? Is he crazy? Li Chen realized what he was doing and let him go. He apologized and thought, what happened? He lost control of his emotions, more and more often lately. The guards screamed, what's wrong with him? The leader appreciates him, but that doesn't mean they won't touch him. Lin asked, Li Chen? Let him in. The guard replied, okay. Lin said to come in, after which the surprised Li Chen opened the door. She smiled and asked, what? Li Chen replied that he was talking about the tentacle attacks. There was another theory. Lin asked, theory? Li Chen replied, he checked the scene. There were female footprints. The victim was a man, not him. Lin frowned and then asked, so, another killer? Li Chen answered, exactly. Lin understood him and said that this was useful information, but they should not blab about it. The tentacle one was enough for them to get scared. They will refuse to go outside. Li Chen tried to object, but Lin did not let him say a word. She said, enough. She guarantees that it will not get worse. Li Chen looked at her with displeasure, and she moved closer to him and creating an awkward tension asked, what? He wants to chat some more? Li Chen rushed to the door in fear and screamed, no. He asked to be forgiven and ran out, slamming the door. He embarrassedly ruffled his hair and said, horror, he forgot to ask again. At that moment, laughter and a question came from behind the next door. Woman's footprints? She was too careless. Lin looked away and said that he could take this job on himself since he was so careful. Peng cut the body on the table and said, okay, but she will clean up. After a while, MC stood surrounded by the dead, holding a blade in his hands. He said, he's almost there. It's time for him to change his appearance. Xiaoyang took out a pair of scissors and cut his hair, and then picked up dirt from the ground and smeared it on his face. A moment later, he had already transformed and walked towards the factory. The guy ordered him to stop and asked, who is he? MC smiled and said he noticed that some people were living nearby. Great, there are survivors left here. The guy smiled and asked, is he a loner? Guy, how did he manage to hold out for so long? Xiaoyang frowned and said, there were about 10 of them, but a horde of zombies attacked recently. The rest died, only he escaped. The guy smiled and said, it seems he is not very strong. MC asked again, strong? He spread his arms in different directions and shouted, no, not really. Although he has a little experience in fighting zombies, he will try. The guy said he didn't mean that. Let him forget it. He waved his hand to the side and said to come with him if he wanted to join. He needed to pass the test first. Xiaoyang thought it would be hard to find good people in this factory. Suddenly a voice rang out. What happened? Li Chen frowned and said, an unfamiliar face. The guy smiled and said, Brother Li, this is a loner. He was taking him to search. Li Chen thought about it. Search? He asked. Why take him away? Let him do it here. MC thought that the guy was just going to take him to a deserted place and finish him off. Li Chen looked at him and ordered him to hand over his weapon, and then he could pass. Xiaoyang asked, hand it over? He must believe that they won't kill him inside? Li Chen said, there's an apocalypse going on. This is a precaution from evil people. He ordered him to get lost if he doesn't want to give it up. MC held out the blade and said, okay, let them take it. Li Chen checked him by feeling his clothes. Xiaoyang looked at him and thought, does he still have some moral principles? It seems that the people from the factory are a little different from the savages in the villas and coal factory. Li Chen frowned and asked, to survive with only one knife? Is he an evolutionist? MC clenched his fists and asked, an evolutionist? Maybe. He feels a little stronger than usual. Li Chen waved his hand and said to go. They have a rule to report such people to the superiors. He took MC into the room and told him to sit in the reception area. Xiaoyang asked, is the reception area with a reinforced door? It looks more like a prison cell. After a while, Peng entered the room and apologized for waiting. What is his name? MC answered, Jiang Ye. Peng looked at him and asked, he was told that he had undergone evolution. Is that right? Li Chen said, he could hear from his tone that he already knew the answer. Suddenly an axe flew towards him, which MC dodged and it crashed into the wall. Xiaoyang frowned and thought, an attack? No, he was testing it. He pointed his finger at the axe and shouted, it was dangerous. Peng laughed and said, so he got it right. MC shouted in irritation. What if he was wrong? Would he just kill? Peng spread his arms out to the sides and said that such losses are acceptable. They both know the way to become evolvers. He frowned and asked to let him warn him. Others should not know the method of evolution, only a few people know. If he tells anyone. Peng jumped up and rushed towards MC, saying that he will kill him. Xiaoyang thought, close. Lucky he attacked with his bare hands. He would have reflexively responded if he had a weapon. Killing this guy does not guarantee getting 80 system points. Peng removed his hand and said, great reflexes, he even took out a weapon. There's no need to be arrogant. He has some experience, but his strength is beyond imagination. Do you get it? MC replied, of course. Peng put his hand on his shoulder and said that he would turn a blind eye to him, bringing the blade inside. He walked out of the room and said that Jiang Ye needed to wash up and change his clothes, and then take him to the assembly hall. The guy replied he understood. After a while, Peng ordered him to pass, and the guard said that he had brought him. Peng asked to allow him to introduce the newest member of the team, Jiang Ye. He turned around and said that Huang Lin was also the leader. The other two were the leaders of the settlement, Li Chen and Huang Bin. Lin looked away and said, Huang Bin, you're new to it. Any objections? Huang Bin frowned and replied, no problem. Lin walked up to MC and said, the guy was lucky to have found the strongest settlement in this area. He guaranteed his own survival, but only the useful ones would receive food. Xiaoyang nodded his head and said that he would obey. Huang Bin walked up to him and put his hand on his shoulder and said, he's on time, it's his turn to patrol today. They're coming. After a while he said, Atzian, Asen, they're leaving to patrol. Asen frowned and asked, Uncle, did they give him this guy? Huang Bin frowned and asked, what could he do? He knows the secret, they could only assign him to this group. Asen walked next to MC and wondered why he seemed familiar. Huang Bin turned around and asked, Peng told him the details of their settlement? Xiaoyang replied no, he only warned him to keep quiet about the evolution. Huang Bin turned around and said, the secret of eating human flesh is known to the sister, Peng and the four of them. Asen, this is Peng's cousin. Atzian, his and Lin's nephew. They are one family, so the secret can only be leaked by him. Does he get it? MC replied yes, he will keep quiet. Xiaoyang turned around and thought, Shu Asen, it was he who was caught by the Zhangqi group. He asked, and the other leader? Huang Bin asked, Li Chen? He laughed and said that he was an outsider, but talented and strong. He must not know the secret under any circumstances. Otherwise, both of them will not live to see the next day. MC frowned and thought, Li Chen seems to have enormous potential. They are limiting his resources and information so as not to surpass the two leaders. Suddenly Huang Bin said, so they are there. Xiaoyang asked again, are they there? Huang Bin replied that it was a small settlement, about 7 people. They have been observing them for 3 or 4 days and have not seen any evolutionists. MC asked, what's the plan? Hunting? Huang Bin laughed and said that they are not barbarians, cultivation. Atzian threw his arm around MC's neck and said, boy, he is also an evolutionist. It's time to change his thinking. No need to be as stubborn as Li Chen. Roughly speaking, they are not the same species as normal humans. The top of the food chain. Xiaoyang asked, do they want to take them and raise them in the settlement to finish them off later? Huang Bin turned around and replied that not all of them were necessary. 5 or 6 would be enough, and they would deal with the rest on the spot. MC asked again, how will they deal with them? Huang Bin laughed and ordered to watch and learn. After a while, the guys were plastering the wall. One of them threw the spatula over his shoulder and said, finally, he's almost done. This work is so tiring. Suddenly the man pointed his finger forward and asked, what is this? The zombies quickly rushed towards them, and the workers screamed in fear. Horror, where did this horde come from? We need to prepare for battle, quickly. The monsters pounced on the guys, who took out their pistols and ordered them to stay back. The guy squeezed the peg in fear and said, there are too many of them. MC asked, is this his genius plan to set the zombies on them? Huang Bin spread his arms out and said that their resources were not unlimited. They couldn't take a large number of people. If they brought more than 10 people at a time, they could form a group that would be difficult to manage. Now it's their turn. The guys moved forward, quickly cutting off the head of the monster that attacked the girl. Atzian extended his hand, and she asked, was she saved? The guy asked in surprise, who are they? Huang Bin pointed his hand at himself and said that they were evolutionists from the Sigan steel factory. The workers asked, evolutionists, who are they? They were saved. MC looked at them and thought that the guys were in their early 20s. Their physical strength was comparable to Zhangqi's group. Suddenly he heard a noise and turned around, seeing a light coming from the window of the house. He asked, was it his imagination? At this moment, Huang Bin shouted, Jiang Ye, stop standing there and watching. Let him help clean up the mess. He replied, yes. At this moment, there was a tentacle in the window that Xiaoyang found suspicious. The guy said that there were some supplies left in the warehouse. Wang Bin turned around and said, Jianye, let him stay here and drag everything to the entrance. He will arrange for a small truck to come here. The bodies of the dead people in one pile. They will take them too. MC replied, okay. Wang Bin pointed at himself with his thumb and said, the rest of them follow him. They began to leave and Xiaoyang created a blade. He said, this is successful. After a while the guy thanked the evolutionists for their help. They saved their lives. The girl happily asked, is there water in their settlement? Will it be possible to wash? Atzian pressed the girl to himself and said, not just water, but hot. There's even shower gel. She will be clean. The girl asked embarrassedly, really? Suddenly Essen stopped and turned around in fear. Wang Bin asked displeasedly, is he in some kind of problem? Essen replied that there is someone there. Wang Bin stopped and shouted loudly, attention. Atzian at that moment hugged the girl and told her to stay behind. He would protect her. The guys looked around and asked, where is he? They can't figure it out. Atzian smiled and asked, Asin, when did he become paranoid? Asen turned around and answered tensely, it's not a mistake, it's definitely here. Suddenly, a tentacle pierced his neck, and he screamed in fear. Asin! Wang Bin screamed, tentacle. Someone asked, did he dodge? Too fast. A scream rang out from behind. Wang Bin turned around and saw the face of a monster approaching him. At this moment, MC was gutting the bodies of zombies, from which he extracted cores. He said, from these zombies there are 2 whole cores. This is not bad. He heard a loud cry for help. After a while, Wang Bin said, he's finished. The tentacles squeezed his body, breaking everything inside. The survivors looked at him in fear as blood splashed on their bodies. Atzian started to cry from what he saw, after which the tentacle turned to him. Atzian said in fear, not that. He grabbed the girl and threw her towards the monster, who quickly squeezed her body. She began to lose consciousness, when suddenly she fell to the ground, and the tentacles of the monster flew to the sides. Atzian screamed, Jianye? He turned towards the monster and asked, is this the same tentacle they were talking about? Atzian pointed his hand towards the monster and said, no, this is his son. MC asked again, son? Atzian answered, yes, that's what they call them. That monster constantly mumbles something about a son. He has the ability to turn ordinary zombies into ones similar to himself. That's why he is the tentacle's son. He frowned and thought, even Auntie and Peng will have a hard time facing the son alone. Jianye is definitely not a match for him. It's time to get away. Atzian rushed to run and shouted, Jianye, let him delay him. He will bring reinforcements. The remaining survivors began to scatter, and MC asked, reinforcements? He is just trying to buy time to escape. The monster stretched out its long tentacles and tied Xiaoyang's hands. He smiled and said, Tentacle's son, this is a funny idea. He swung his hand and pulled the monster towards himself. MC said that he was able to interest him. He said that he had no reason to test his awakened abilities. They will test it on him. He stomped his foot and shouted, physical overload. Tentacle was surprised by MC's abilities, and he kicked its head. The monster roared loudly, and the girl grabbed her face in fear. Xiaoyang pressed to tear apart the tentacle's body, throwing body parts in different directions. He finished and then went to the girl and asked, is she okay? The girl screamed in fear, and Xiaoyang wiped the blood from his forehead and said with a smile on his face, calm down. He's a human, not a monster. After a while, the survivors ran into the camp and screamed, they're here! Finally, Peng asked in fear, what happened? Lin held a dagger in her hands and asked, Wang Bin and Asen? Atzian shook in fear and answered, uncle and brother Asen, they were killed by the son of the tentacle. Li Chen frowned and asked a question, and the newcomer? Atzian replied, there's no point in even asking, he's definitely dead. The 3 of them couldn't handle it. Peng lowered his head and frowned in irritation. He looked back at the survivors and screamed, all for the sake of useless people. He swung his axe and chopped up the guys' bodies. Lin fearfully ordered him to calm down. Suddenly, the monster's tied tentacles fell to the ground, which attracted everyone's attention. MC and the girl returned to the camp, and Li Chen happily asked, Jianye, did he survive? Lin looked at the tentacles and said, and this? Xiaoyang interrupted her and said, the son or whatever his name was, he was killed by it. He avenged their relatives. Lin looked at it carefully and thought, this guy, is that strong? MC ordered to prepare people and transport, need to pick up the loot. After a while, they were sitting at the table and Peng asked Atzian, is he sure that the son of the tentacle was stronger than Li Chen? Atzian clenched his jaw and said, that thing instantly killed Uncle and Asen. Could Li Chen do the same? He doubts it. Frankly speaking, even they would have problems, right? Peng looked at Lin and said, Zhang Ye reacted when he threatened, but only managed to draw his weapon, did not take a stance. How can he be so strong? Lin frowned and said that the son of the tentacle relies on ambushes. Perhaps they exaggerated his strength. Peng replied that was logical. It was impossible not to leave such a guy around. If he colluded with Li Chen. Lin put her finger to her lips, calling for silence. Li Chen entered the room and said, Chief? Peng turned around and asked, yes? Li Chen asked to accept his condolences. Peng replied that they had been in the apocalypse for a long time, let him forget about these formalities, and get straight to the point. Li Chen said he thought that Zheng's strength was comparable to his. He suggested appointing him as another leader of the settlement. Peng replied, no, they don't know his background. Lin waved her hand, which made him question. She said, he has the strength to become a leader, but he has no achievements and contributions. They don't trust him. Li Chen asked, isn't killing the tentacle son enough? Lin smirked and said, if he can kill the tentacle itself, it will solve 2 problems at once. Even they can't do it. How can he? It doesn't sound fair. Lin smiled and replied, no need to worry, they're not sending him to his death. The entire settlement's strength will be deployed. They'll finish off that monster once and for all. After a while, MC asked in surprise, will the plan revolve around him? He hasn't lived here for that long, but he's already getting an important role. Are they sure? Lin chuckled and said, of course, he's stronger than her and Peng after all. Peng smiled and said, he'll become the 3rd leader if the mission goes well. He turned around and asked Li Chen, Jiang Ye has surpassed him in strength, is he against his appointment? Li Chen replied, no. Peng smiled and said, great, they'll set out in 2 days. Xiaoyang smiled and thought, what a generous offer, he's so touched. Only he has the eye of the mind. After a while, Bai ran outside and shouted, Xiaoyang's brother is calling on the radio. Hongli frowned and asked, So Yun, how is it going? MC ordered to listen carefully. The day after tomorrow morning, a country park in the south. We need to bring Chong and other strong fighters. They will get rid of the threat in the southern part of the city once and for all. After a while, Hongli said, Uncle Sheng, he's a bit old. They will not take him on such a risky mission. They need him here. Shengbo replied, okay, but let them be careful. The task is clearly more difficult than the previous ones. Hongli replied, of course. He turned around and said, Zhang Qi, Xingkai, Shanchen, Zixuan, Liu Chao, Chen Jie, Chen Chong. 7 will go with him. They all answered, yes. Shuai shouted, he will go too. Xiao Li looked at him and said, this is a fight for adults. Why should he interfere? Shuai frowned and said, he is no longer a child, but a man. Song said to relax, he is strong enough. Not only against zombies, even in the main team, he cannot be called a weakling. Hongli said yes, he'd better gain some experience. He'll keep an eye on it. After a while, a big car arrived at the park. Peng got out of it and said, they're here. MC asked how they'll lure them out. Peng asked not to rush, they have a plan. Suddenly, Xiaoyang heard some rustling to the side and turned around. The MC team members were sitting on the roof, and Shanshan asked, can you see everything? Or will they come closer? Hongli replied, Xiaoyang said not to approach the park ahead of time. He ordered to prepare the ropes. They'll strike from the flank when it all starts. At this moment, Lin ordered Shuai to come to her. He asked what she wanted. Lin ordered to go to the park, and he asked fearfully, wasn't he brought in to carry things? Li Chen frowned and asked, Lin's sister, what's going on? Lin smiled and said, that thing keeps muttering about a son, so they'll give him a son. Don't worry, they'll finish off the tentacle-like when it shows up. The guy won't get hurt. Shuai said in fear, he doesn't want to be bait. Peng grabbed him by the shirt and ordered him to shut up and follow orders before he finished him off himself. He swung and threw the guy into the park, causing him to hit his head hard. Hongli looked through his binoculars and said, movement. It started. The MC team members started to climb down from the roof of the building on ropes, and the guy asked for help. At that moment, a loud scream was heard. Son! The tentacle-like jumped to the ground and Shuai screamed, he doesn't want to die. Sheng Jie frowned and his red eyes flashed. Li Chen shouted, okay, he took the bait, they need to save the kid. He walked forward, then Lin grabbed his hand and said, he promised not to steal Zhang Yi's merits. MC chuckled and said, yeah. He pushed off the ground and rushed towards the monster, snatching the guy from the tentacles. Li Chen caught Shuai and put him on the ground. Xiaoyang broke his glasses, and Sheng Jie annoyedly ordered to return his son. MC said puzzledly same. Li Chen ordered MC to hold on, when suddenly Peng and Lin twisted his arms. He asked what they were doing. He was going to die. Lin smiled and said, yeah, right. She thought the guy would be able to fight equally, and he would be another worthless victim. Li Chen asked annoyed, did they set this up? Why? At this moment, Xiaoyang screamed, he will explain. He knows their secret. Eating people. Li Chen asked, eating people. A scream was heard. Open fire. Peng screamed, ambush. Lin asked in fear, who is this? Some MC team members fired at them and the rest rushed to protect the MC. Shuai swung a bottle of fuel and shouted, Xiaoyang, they came to help. He threw the bottle, which broke and spread the fire. Sheng Jie looked at him and asked, son? Shuai frowned and screamed, horror, this monster is too strong. Sheng Jie ordered him to stop swearing. Zhang Qi said, be careful, this is not an ordinary zombie. Chong rushed forward and Zhang Qi told him, be careful. He dodged the tentacles and Atzian asked in fear, what is this? Another mutant? Lin asked, is he fighting on the side of the people? Chong dodged the blows and then tore apart the tentacles of the monster. A scream was heard. Brother Chong, be careful. The tentacles struck his body and he jumped back. MC laughed and said he found a worthy opponent. Peng asked in irritation, this idiot manages to joke even in such a situation? Xiaoyang tore the tentacles of the monster, and Peng asked in surprise, he tore them apart? These are the tentacles of the main body. Atxian frowned and ordered to wait. That little one called Jian Ye, Xiaoyang. Peng asked, so what? Atxian said, Asin mentioned that the leader of the fortress in the city was called Chen. Lin frowned and asked, Zhang Xiaoyang, right? Atxian shouted, that's right, Zhang Xiaoyang. Peng held the gun in front of him and cried out in irritation, horror. He outsmarted them. Lin said, it seems like these are the main forces of that fortress. The guys there are the strongest there. They are comparable to Li Chen, but their weapons are more powerful. The main problem is Jian Ye, no Zhang Xiaoyang, and that mutant who fights the tentacle won on equal terms. Lin said, there is no guarantee of victory. The losses will be terrible no matter what. Atxian asked, what will they do? Lin screamed. She thought of something. Peng, let him distract them. They must cover him. Peng swung his axe and screamed. He got it. He threw it forward, after which the order was given to be careful. The trees were fired upon. Hongli hid behind a tree and asked, they have wreaked havoc, but what are they up to? Lin rushed towards Shuai, and Bai screamed, be careful, they are aiming for him. Lin kicked him in the face and threw him aside. Bai screamed, she is strong, it is an evolutionary. Lin reached out to Shuai, then she picked him up by the blouse. She said, you got him, the little one. Shanshan screamed, Shuai. He frowned and said, she shouldn't even think about taking him hostage. Lin smiled and said, wow, he has power too. She punched him in the face. Then Shengji rushed towards her and shouted, son. Chong jumped on his back and grabbed him by the neck, growling loudly. MC told him to calm down and let him go. Chong looked at him puzzled, and Xiaoyang said that he was willing to risk his life now. Not standing in his way would be the right decision. Lin ordered to let go of the guns if they didn't want to see a headless child. Hongli put his hand to his chest and said, she must let go. He will become a hostage in his place. Lin grinned as she became excited. She had chosen a good target. He shouted, damn. How would he explain to his mother if something happened to him? She squeezed Shuai's throat tighter and shouted, put the gun down. And they must retreat 100 meters. Hongli raised his hand up and replied, they must comply. Zichuan agreed with him, and then Lin shouted that they must order their monster to finish off Tentacle. But before she could finish speaking, Peng anxiously shouted for her to be careful. Several tentacles headed towards her, and she jumped back abruptly. One of the tentacles separated Atxian's upper body, and Peng anxiously called out to him. Lin landed on the ground and wondered what happened. Wasn't Tentacle busy? Then she looked at the protagonist and was surprised. Are they just watching? Hongli at this moment shouted at Shuai to get out of there. The boy looked at his leg wrapped in a tentacle in horror, and then the protagonist said that everything was fine, he was not in danger. Hongli was surprised. Nothing? The next second, the tentacle one lifted Shuai with its tentacles and said, son. The boy was surprised. Him? The protagonist looked at him and said, Shenzhe. He kept his word, his wife and son are fine. Shuai shouted in surprise, seriously? Dad? The protagonist confirmed it and explained that it was his father. He was not mistaken. He became the same as Chong. Shuai, with tears in his eyes, clung to his father and shouted, Dad! Peng at this moment was indignant. What kind of drama are they causing? I don't care. They're leaving. They're retreating. Shengji looked at him and then directed his tentacles towards him. He tried to escape, but the tentacles still wrapped around his body and he screamed. She must quickly cut off the tentacles. But seeing no reaction, he turned around and was indignant. What is she waiting for, Lin? She quickly ran in the opposite direction, and he screamed, Idiot, how could she abandon him? Lin ran forward and thought, they can hardly defeat Tentacle even together. Not to mention the rest, the only thing left is to give Peng and. She was pulled out of her thoughts by a tentacle that grabbed her leg, and she screamed, damn! Then she hit her head on the ground. The broken glasses flew off her face. She raised herself up on her hands and said, Idiot. Then the tentacle pulled her back. Peng, looking at this, screamed, did she think she could escape on her own? Serves her right. Then he looked at Li Chen and said that they were the only ones left. He replied nervously, there is no choice. At this moment, MC put his hand on his shoulder, and he was surprised when he snuck up on him. The protagonist told him not to twitch. He will help him get out of this alive. Peng shouted indignantly, Freak! Li Chen, is he a traitor too? Shengji then lifted him up in the air and then slammed him into the ground with all his might. Peng's face was covered in blood, and then the tentacles hit him from above, thereby crushing him. After that, he grabbed Lin, and she, trying to get out, told him to let her go. But he squeezed even harder. She rolled her eyes, and the next second she was gone. At this moment, a system window appeared in front of the protagonist, which said that the quest, The Hunter of the Villains of the third part, is complete. The conditions are to eliminate the threat and help potential allies. Reward, 80 points. Current points, 151. MC shook his head and chuckled. A potential ally is Shengje? He then turned to Li Chen and asked if he had any questions. He asked if they came from the eastern suburbs. The protagonist replied that it was true, and he asked what he meant when he said eating people. He asked in return, does he think that evolutionists become evolutionists by chance? Li Chen was surprised, so they must be able to evolve. At this moment, a memory popped into his head. Mary, looking at the metal container in Li Chen's hands, said to her mother, she also wants meat. Bella leaned over to her and stretched out her hand saying, stop being naughty. Uncle needs strength to protect them. She then turned to him and apologized, explaining that she didn't understand. He replied, it's okay. Let him eat a little. He then held out the container and Bella shouted, no, you don't need to. Li Chen tensed up at the memory. After that, he remembered several survivors running out of the building and screaming, Tentacle is back. Several people are missing. Did they see it? No, otherwise, they would have gotten out of there alive. Bella cried out with tears in her eyes. Where is her daughter? Did anyone see her daughter? These memories made Li Chen feel sick. He clenched his teeth and then abruptly rose to his feet, taking a stance next to Peng's corpse. After that, he began to punch it with his fists and screamed that he was a freak. His face and body were covered in blood. He breathed heavily and then turned around and screamed. Did they also get power from eating people? Hongli held out his hand and was indignant. Who does he think they are? MC threw him a core and told him to relax. They know more than him. There are other ways to gain power. They use this, mutant cores. This can be obtained from zombies or evolvers, harder to find than human flesh, but the effectiveness is better without side effects. Li Chen clarified, side effects? The protagonist continued. He thinks that he has already noticed that after evolution it has become harder to control emotions, violence and murder begin to stimulate. He hesitantly confirmed this and said, then he too. The protagonist approached him and said, there is no turning back, but the symptoms will not get worse if he does not eat flesh. Then he turned to the father and son and said, now they, Shengje, can he talk? He raised his hand and shouted, Brother Jiang, son, thank you, saved. MC shouted, what the hell? Did he decide to put pressure on emotions? He shook his head in confusion and said, brother, son. Then the protagonist waved his hand and said, okay, he should forget, he got it. This reminds Chong, the speech center is damaged but the mind is intact. He looks terrible, he will return to his previous state. Shengje interrupted him and replied, no need, place, relief. The protagonist clarified, is he used to this place? And is he glad that his son is safe? He gave a thumbs up and said with a smile, brother? Great intelligence, head. The protagonist explained that this is called smart. He then turned to Li Chen and said, all threats have been eliminated, but he will have to lead the remaining people from the factory. He shook his head and said that he ate human flesh. They will be in danger if he becomes the leader. MC thought about it and then said, Hongli, will he take control of the factory? He agreed with him, and the protagonist said that Li Chen will go with him. He put his hand on his shoulder and said that he will look after the demon in his heart. Sometime later, a neighboring city, the outskirts of S City. The survivors screamed, begging for help. They were running away from the monsters. Pete stretched his hand back, with tears in his eyes, but Zhou Xingkai grabbed him and shouted, he must stop, he can't be saved anymore. He shouted, damn it, and then ran away from the survivor who fell near the monsters. He desperately asked for help while the fern leaves covered his face. The next second, the space next to him was filled with green smoke, and the monsters began to tear him apart. After a while, they stood near the remains, the body parts turned into leaves, and the monster screamed loudly. After a while, Xiaotong put her hand on the tree and, breathing heavily, said that she can't run anymore. Xingkai took her hand and shouted, she still has to run. They will be torn to pieces if they are caught. Then Pete raised his hand and shouted, stop. He was surprised. What? Pete put his finger to his lips and said, quietly, they must listen. After that, he shouted, the wind, the sound of the wind. The other survivors agreed with him and he shouted, so they were approaching the edge of this jungle. Then they heard sounds behind them and quickly ran forward, shouting, they caught up. There is no time, they must run. Xingkai turned to his girlfriend and shouted, they are almost there. They can't die. After a while, they stopped after leaving the jungle and shouted, there is a light ahead. They are at the edge of the jungle. Xiaotong pointed her finger forward and shouted happily, it worked, it's safe there. The next second, someone shouted to her, be careful. A long vine suddenly wrapped itself around her neck, and a huge monster appeared from behind the treetops, began to pull her into itself. She only had time to sigh when the plant's mouth suddenly closed. Tears streamed down Xingkai's face. He desperately screamed, his Xiaotong. Pete grabbed his shoulder and shouted, he must come to his senses. He turned around at the noise behind them and noticed, damn, those plants are already here. He then slapped his comrade in the face and shouted, Xiaotong is dead. He needs to pull himself together if he wants to live. Xingkai shouted out words of apology. After a while, they ran out of the jungle and came out into the open. The plants also came out of the jungle and headed towards the survivors. After a while, they walked further, and Pete noticed that he knew this place. The suburban park near M City. They've made it. The survivor noticed that it was strange. Why is there no one here? His comrade agreed with him and added that it looked abandoned. Pete turned around and explained that he thought they had to evacuate the surrounding towns after what happened in S City. Shinkai then pointed forward and asked, "What is this?" Shenji was standing behind a lamppost and Pete waved his hand and said, "Survivor. It seems some people managed to escape earlier. Hey kid, where is the evacuation point?" Shenji looked at them silently and stepped forward slightly. They shouted in fear, "A plant?" Then they turned around abruptly and ran in the opposite direction. After a while, they stopped and, trying to catch their breath, began to talk to each other. "Is it chasing?" Shinkai replied, "It doesn't look like it." Pete, frowning, perplexed, shouted, "What's going on? Is it outside the jungle too?" Their comrade asked, "Does that mean everything is lost here too?" Shinkai asked, "But why doesn't the jungle spread further? What will they do?" Then they heard a noise from the side and, turning around, screamed in fear. "Plants!" They started looking in different directions and screaming, "There too! They are surrounded. This is the end." Shinkai fell to the ground and, clutching his head, began to mutter, "Damn, I should not have run. They could have hidden in the jungle for a couple more months, and Xiaotong would still be alive." The next second, the plants headed towards them. One of the survivors put a knife to his neck and screamed in a trembling voice, "He will not let himself be torn to pieces. He will not die like this." The next second, a tentacle flew very close to his head and attacked the plant. Shengji walked forward past the survivors, and they cried out in bewilderment, "What?" Meanwhile, the protagonist, leaning on the railing, noticed that it was windy today. A system window appeared in front of him, which said, "The task is a poor utopia in progress. The goal is to expand the community. Progress. A branch has been established, the Sigan Steel Factory. Reward, +20, current rating, 62, bonus points, +80, current points, 231. He was surprised. Wow, another 80. He didn't think he would get so much. He decided to look at the new goods. A system window appeared in front of him, which said, "A supply box of armed resistance of the 2nd level, 20 points. A supply box of awakening of the force of the 3rd level, 100 points. A supply box of dark technologies of the 2nd level, 50 points. An update, 4 points. He shouted in bewilderment, "The 3rd level?" He opened physical overload on the 2nd. He decided to see what he would get this time. Then the system reported, "A supply box of armed resistance of the 2nd level is opened, received, an armored jeep. A supply box of awakening of the force of the 3rd level is opened, received, a mark of slavery of the 1st level. Description: he must mark the target with the slave mark to make it his slave. The number of targets is 1. Dark technology supply box level 2 opened, received, physical enhancement potion +30. He thought about it. Only 1 target? Zhongye, Shengji and Li Chen are relatively safe. He will hold on to it for now. Then a system window appeared in front of him, which said, "The task is in progress, a beggarly utopia. The goal is to expand the community. Conditions: repel an attack in any settlement. Reward: 10 points. New task: Weed Killer Part 1. Conditions: eliminate the threat posed by weeds. Reward: 100 points. He was surprised. The threat from weeds? He should weed the beds? At this moment, a scream was heard from the radio lying on the table behind him. "Xiaoyong? Can you hear him? Shuai Shuai's father is in trouble." Meanwhile, the survivors asked in surprise, "Are these zombies? What's going on? Is he also in the group of the leader of Xiaoyong?" Shengji approached them with a monster in his hand. His wife and son happily ran to him, and he shouted, "Son, a wedding!" Shengbo, hearing this, was surprised. "A wedding?" The protagonist explained that he thought he wanted to say wife. The mutation damaged the speech center. He can consider him a patient with aphasia. Then the family members hugged, and MC went down to the plant and, tearing off a small part, asked, "Is this it?" Shengji answered, "A large dish of stewed meat with vegetables, a mess." He was surprised. Meat with vegetables? Pete pointed his finger to the side and said that he will explain everything now. They came from the city of S. It is absorbed by the jungle. Many people have mutated into plants. It looks like these things. The protagonist thoughtfully said, "Mutant plants." The survivor added that he thought that it was not very safe in the city of M either. Then the protagonist stood up and waved his hand and said, "They saw it on the way. The villagers turned into zombies." Pete agreed with him, and then he turned to Shengbo and said, "There is an armored jeep near the destroyed wall, 2 streets away from the base. He should ask someone to drive it." He accepted his order, and then the protagonist turned to the others and said, "And they should go with him. They will check the border between the cities." After a while, they approached the jungle. MC knelt down, trying to examine the plants closer. Pete noticed that these vines had grown even stronger. Then the protagonist stood up and said, "Okay, they will go to the jungle. The survivor asked in surprise, "Huh? It's very dangerous there. They did not flee from there to come back." The protagonist replied, "If they leave this unattended, the jungle will soon swallow the steel factory. It will harm daily life and production. But first, they need to deal with one more problem." Zhengqi asked what kind. He replied that they needed power to help them deal with the crisis on their own. Hongli and the steel factory team should be brought in while they focused on hunting. Meanwhile, the zombie was eating the corpse and then turned around at the sound. At that moment, MC appeared behind the monster and cut off its head with a wave of his weapon. The remaining survivors, armed, also went to attack the monsters. Firing bullets, they killed it. The protagonist and the others were busy extracting cores from the monsters while Bobby said, "Zombies again." He kicked the zombie lying in front of him and was indignant. "Where are the living people?" "There are none." Then he looked at the zombie that ran at him, but he waved his hand, cutting off half of its head. And then he grabbed his head and said that he was tired of eating zombie meat. "Why aren't there even a couple here?" He turned around in surprise and felt the presence of survivors. Meanwhile, at the base, one of the survivors went out the gate, finishing off the monster. His comrade shouted, "Hey, are you tired of living?" The leader said not to open the door at such a time without permission. He turned back and asked, "So what?" The leader of Xiaoyang and his team killed almost all the zombies in the area anyway. He was indignant. He must stop talking nonsense. He must come in. Bobby was watching them at that moment, hiding behind the wall, and licking his lips, said, "Alive." He had never eaten such people, pure people. "But they have powerful weapons. It will be dangerous. We'll have to spend a couple of days." The veins on his body bulged, tears flowed from his eyes, saliva flowed from the corner of his lips, and he shouted, "This is annoying." After some time, a system window appeared in front of the protagonist, which said, "The update was successful, the purchase was completed, the current points are 3. Using the walkie-talkie, he ordered Shengbo to gather everyone in the room for a meeting. He replied that he understood him. And after a while, everyone gathered in the right place. The protagonist said that the hunter team did a good job. They collected a lot in 3 days. Hongli, Zhangqi, they will divide the mutant core between them. Hongli put his hands in front of him and asked, "Is he sure?" "He deserves it more than them." Zhangqi agreed with him and added, "Everyone tried hard. It would be unfair to give it only to them." The protagonist raised his hand and said that they should not refuse. There are enough weapons and ammunition here. They need elite hunters. They are much better than immature evolvers. Song, turning to Hongli, said, "Come on, he should just take it. Has Xiaoyang ever been wrong?" He replied, "Okay, he has no doubts about him." Then MC turned to Shanshan and told her to follow him. After that, they left the room, and she, closing the door, asked what she should do. Zishuan put his finger to his mouth and, approaching the door, said, quietly. The other survivors also gathered near the door, and behind that they heard, "She should be patient. It will hurt a little."